Okay.
Hello and welcome to a completely new type of stream. This is called the Level Design Academy. I am Philip and joining me is Don. Hi Don.
Hello.
So let me talk about the LDA overview for a second here and objectives. I've tried to map many times and it hasn't worked out very well, and I really want to make a mod. I've got this idea and I think it would be a cool mod and I want to make it. And Don's been offering to help me for many years, and we've talked about these different ideas, setting up a proper scripted, recorded series, but we just never got around to it. We've just been too busy. So, you know, what we decided to do was have a live stream. And since I've been live streaming, I've found that it's quite a lot of fun, and you actually get things done. You know, it's not going to be as slick as the professional recorded series, but it's going to be live, and we'll get interaction with the viewers. So if you see us looking down here, or you see me looking down here, you'll see that I look at my netbook to make sure that I follow the chat, and we feel that the interaction with the users will compensate for not having like a slickly produced video series. We are hoping that each session will prove really useful for those wanting to learn to map. In fact, I'm sure they are. They will be. We will be starting from the very beginning. We will not make any assumptions about what you know, because Don will actually be teaching me and I know nothing. And what we will do is I will be asking the questions that you might be too embarrassed or couldn't find on the internet to ask, and Don will be answering them, and then we'll be talking about those answers. When we finish the sessions, not this one, we feel that our objective here is to actually have a fully playable mini mod, which might only have one map, and it might not include anything new, but it will be something that when people have finished they'll be sort of proud of. That's what we sort of hope to do. We don't know how many sessions that will take, because unlike the pre-planned ones, we're just going to sort of play it by ear, which means we're just going to do each session and see what happens and get the feedback. We're not going to cover every single topic in depth, because we won't have time, because Don's not an expert on absolutely everything. Is that right, Don? You're not an expert on everything, are you?
Yeah, we can go with that.
Okay, right. And we also think that it would be an interesting opportunity for other collaborators to work with us on maybe making sort of side videos about more topics in depth that are just part of the main sessions but are not required, you know, to watch them. And lastly, I'll be streaming my practice sessions, because I think it would be helpful for people to see me making the mistakes and doing those kind of things as well. And it'll also encourage me to be, you know, online and actually start streaming, practicing. And Don will hopefully be around for some of those, but not all of them. You know, he'll be sort of whipping me into shape, but sometimes you just need to make mistakes yourself and sort of waste a bit of time and then get angry about it and realise that, you know, you learn that way. So there we go. All right, Don, why don't you want to talk about today's objectives, the session's objectives? Do you want to do that?
Yeah, so the first session, as you said, should only last, estimating maybe 90 minutes or so, but we'll see how it goes. The goal is to have you play your own map today. Now, it'll probably just be a box, but it's a start just to get... You know, I remember way back in 1999 when I started mapping, just, you know, my first map was a box, and my second map was a box with a gargantua. So we'll see how it goes today, but if we get to a playable single map today, we're in good shape.
All right, cool. So let me introduce myself. Now, I know probably 90% of the people viewing today and probably on YouTube will know me, but we're hoping to actually expand to a wider audience, people that haven't, you know, come in contact with the website. So I'm Philip, and I run what's called RunThinkShootLive.com, which was formerly known as Planet Philip. It's a site dedicated to single-player maps and mods for the Half-Life series of games. I'm only interested in single-player things. I've been playing since around 2002, so a few years after Half-Life came out, but still, you know, fairly early compared to some people, and I've been streaming for about a year, maybe a year and a half. I've got a few other projects that I've started. One of them was called the Beta Testers Collective, which is a group of people who test single-player maps. I've tried mapping a few times, as I mentioned briefly at the introduction, and I even created a few private maps for Unreal Tournament, but just it's basically a room and a few spawns, and it's not really very interesting. So that's me. Don, take over.
Yeah, I've played Half-Life since literally the week it came out, and started mapping not even a year later, like I said, in middle of 1999, and have been moderately active on and off in the Half-Life community and the mapping community for Half-Life and its mods since then. So I can't say I've released a ton of maps, certainly not as prolific as a lot of Half-Life and Gold Source mappers out there, but I'm pretty familiar with the tools and have created probably thousands of mini test maps and things like that over the years. So I'm not an expert in everything, which is why it's good to see some experienced Gold Source and Source mappers in the chat here with us today. So hopefully they can steer me when I go wrong.
Yeah, I think that would be an interesting thing, sort of little discussions between mappers about sometimes the best way to do things, and of course people will have their own views, but even just talking about it can shed some light on some of these issues. All right, so let's talk about the process and presentation. So during these sessions or these streams, we'll be switching between my screen and Don's screen. Now, one of the problems that we have is that we've got a delay on the stream of about 20 seconds, and Don's seeing my screen through the stream. So we might have a few times where we're like, oh, what's happening here? I mean, if we lived in an ideal world, we'd both be sitting in the next to each other in the same house or desk or office, and working it that way. So you'll have to bear with us a few times, because we might be behind. What's going to happen is Don's going to be telling me what to do. Sometimes he'll be showing me what to do, and then I'll be asking questions. I'll try, as Don will, to monitor the chat. So if somebody does have a question that's relevant to exactly what we're doing at that point, then I'll be able to ask, or Don will be able to answer it. When we finish doing the session, all of our video will be uploaded to YouTube, and you can watch it or download it from there if you know how. I'll be setting up some form of forum or interaction for other people who have started mapping via these videos, because I'm sure they'll have questions, and what we don't want to do is bombard Don with individual emails, because he just doesn't have time for that. And maybe we, amongst ourselves, the group of beginners, like an AA meeting, Mappers Anonymous or something, we can try and help each other. So that's the plan. So that's it then. I think we're ready to go. I'm sorry it's taken so long. It's taken like nearly 15 or 10 minutes to actually get to this point where we're going to start. But we felt that it was important to set everything out at the beginning, explain why and who we are. So let's get started. Are we ready, Don?
All right. Yeah.
All right. So
if you want to flip to my screen for a second, I'll go through a little bit of background on what we're doing today in the engine, and then we'll get into installing the programs, which is unfortunately the kind of a boring step, but necessary, since it's not just a single program we need to install.
All right, okay, so I've switched over to your screen, so people will see in the bottom right hand corner there, they'll see a little icon that says Don Screen, so you'll know when you're on Don's screen and not my screen. Take it away, Don.
Right. Okay, yeah, so the goal, as we mentioned, of today's session is just to create my first map. Well, your first map, let's say, but our first map. There you go, our first map.
We're doing it together. It's our first map.
So we're just going to aim for a simple box with a light and a player start, and if we get beyond that, it'll be gravy, as we say.
Okay.
So we're not going to aim for the fancy, well lit, polished map today. That'll come later, maybe.
Maybe tomorrow.
Later. Yeah, right. In your practice sessions, I'll be looking for that, Philip. So we're focusing on the Gold Source engine today, which debuted in 1998 with Half-Life, of course, heavily based on the Quake 1 engine, with a little bit of Quake 2 code, as I understand it. And as you see, it's been used not in a lot of games, but a ton of mods. There's only a handful of games that actually use Gold Source. 007 Nightfire and Gunman Chronicles, as well as, of course, there's like the retail releases of Counter-Strike and Day of Defeat, but those all started as mods. But it's an old engine, but it's pretty fun to work with, in my opinion, and Once if you get the basics of Gold Source down, you're actually pretty well on your way to understanding Source as well.
Okay. So should we? Is now a good time to talk about engines, or are we going to do that in a little bit?
Yeah, it's a good time to talk about it. I hadn't really
All right.
planned
Okay.
much about.
The reason I want to talk.
What it is?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those words that we often use. We talk about engines, but if you're a complete beginner, I mean, what does that mean? The problem is that we hear these phrases like search engine, and you've got like a game engine. So how would we describe a game engine to somebody who doesn't know anything about gaming?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me consult Wikipedia on the side. I would describe a game engine as the I mean, to stick with the car analogy, it's the software under the hood that sort of handles graphics and sounds and everything that interacts with the player. The player input, the sound, like I said, sound and graphics that are presented to the player, the speed and detail of the graphics. So the engine handles the interface sort of between what we build as mappers and sound artists and all these other things. How that all comes together into an experience for the player.
All right.
To give a couple of examples of engines, there is the Unreal Engine, which you said you mapped for a little bit. Mm-hmm. So that would have been in late '99. That's probably about the same time frame as Gold Source. But the early engines were, barely even 3D. For example, Doom had a 3D engine, but it had 2D characters and monsters and everything like that, and they were just sort of cheated in that they kind of projected. They looked like they were at an angle, but they were still just sort of flat rendering of the monster. Whereas now, in the Quake engine and Gold Source and everything since then, it's been three-dimensional. So everything, characters, model, enemies, weapons, of course, the world that you're in are all in 3D. Unreal was a big one. The Doom 3 engine in say 2004, as well as Source made its debut in 2004. And these days, it's really the Unreal Engine and Unity. And there's a couple of other custom engines, like the Cry engine for the Crytek games, like Far Cry and Crysis. There's still, there's a handful of smaller ones out there, but those are sort of the main engines that we've seen over the years.
All right. So basically, what we're saying is that different games use different engines, and that engine is the thing that lets us interact with the world that we've created. So that's what the engine does. And as you mentioned, Gold Source, which is from Valve, was based on another engine, in fact two engines that were kind of not merged together, but it was taken from a game called Quake, which uses the Quake engine. And
right.
Did Doom use the Quake engine, or did they use a different engine?
That's a good question. Maybe somebody in the chat knows, but that might have been, was that the idTech 1 engine maybe in Doom? I'm not even sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what we're talking about here is like each time there's a new engine, they get better and better able to handle graphics, better able to handle artificial intelligence and sounds and all of those things. And the complexity increases. The very early engines were limited, as Don was mentioning. You weren't really doing things in 3D. I've been actually moving my hand in front of the screen, Don. I don't know whether you saw, but basically sort of suggesting that you only see one face of something, and as the camera moved, you sort of only saw that one face all of the time. I don't know whether that's true or not. Hopefully that's true.
That's kind of accurate now that I see the stream. Yeah.
And also there's a few different versions of Gold Source as well, because I've heard people talk about the Spirit engine. We won't go into detail about that, but essentially, am I right in thinking that people have made some slight modifications to Gold Source that improve aspects of it? Is that right?
The Spirit is not an engine, but
okay.
That said, there are a couple of, let's say, Gold Source replacements that people have written. The Trinity renderer and the other one is slipping my mind at the moment. Maybe somebody in the chat knows. I can't think of it, but it's sort of custom rewrites of the Gold Source engine, but Spirit is simply a mod, so it doesn't modify the engine.
Uh-huh.
It simply modifies what you can have in your map and some of the tools.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, good. All right then.
Oh, and the other point I wanted to build on is you mentioned that engines as they get more modern, get more and more complex and are able to render better and bigger things. But in general, they also have become a lot more user friendly. So you look at the modern engines out there now, Unity and UDK and things like that, and hopefully Source 2 will follow this, in that the sort of the pipeline of creating a map or a level or something like that and getting it into the game has actually become a lot more user friendly than what we're going to go through.
Okay.
The pipeline, as they call it. So from you creating something to actually being in the world and playing it, and Gold Source can be a matter of hours, even from saving a map and and starting the compile to be actually playing it.
Okay.
It has to go through a compiling process, and that takes time. But today's engines are mostly sort of real-time rendered, in that if you place a light in the editor, you can see the way the light is going to look before you run the map in the game.
Okay.
Whereas
So let's.
in Gold Source, we can't do that. We have to sort of guess, change it, try it again, that sort of thing.
Okay, so just to clarify a couple of points here, we've used the word pipeline. Pipeline is basically the process of from imagination to playing, and that process is much easier. We've used the word render, which is essentially displaying or showing. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so what we're saying is that we can see that as it's happening in the modern engines, but with the Gold Source engine we can't. And then we've used the word compile, which is essentially taking all of the data and making it into something that's usable for a player. Is that fair to summarize it like that?
Right. It's a way to take what we've saved and export it into a way that into a file that Half-Life can understand.
All right. Okay.
It's kind of the equivalent of a raw Photoshop file, and then you export to a JPEG for use on the web.
Right.
It's a lot more involved than that, but that's sort of a parallel. So.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So,
Good.
and quick thanks to Irby for Exash 3D is the other sort of Gold Source engine replacement.
Okay.
You mentioned that in the chat. So.
All right. So that means that it's a completely new engine that can play Half-Life maps and build Half-Life maps, or is it an extension?
Yes, yeah, that's
It's a new
accurate. No, it's a replacement for Gold Source, which can run Half-Life and similar mods with improvements, mostly in the graphics, I think.
Okay. And how would that affect the end user?
Um,
Is that,
you could.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say maybe that's a new video.
Yeah, I don't get too much into detail on these Gold Source replacements, but they essentially allow for a lot more than Gold Source can handle in terms of size of the maps and special effects and maybe number of characters on the screen, that type of thing.
Okay.
It's been so, even though Gold Source was designed to run in 1998 computers, we're here 18 years later. It scales with the computer power to an extent, but there's still going to be some limits and some sort of choke points in the engine. So we couldn't just go build something in like the Lost Coast or some Half-Life 2 map in Gold Source, simply because the engine isn't designed to handle it, even with modern computers.
Yeah. I mean, a 20-year-old car, even with boosters on, is not going to match a modern sports car. That's what we're saying.
Especially in terms of like safety too. If you look at that,
Okay.
things like advancements all over the place, but there's still some, some limitations we're going to have to deal with, given that it's almost a 20-year-old game at this point.
All right. Okay. Good. So we've covered that. Now we're about to move on to the next part, which is applications, because we're going to need to install and configure these mapping programs. I mean, having the game is not enough. So let's start with that.
Right. So I put up a shared folder on the on Google Drive, and unfortunately my little on-screen graphic is cutting off the S at the end of that, but that's LDA-files at the end of that bit.ly link.
And that takes us to here. We're on my screen at the moment now.
Okay.
Yeah. You want to? I'll jump back to yours. Okay. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. So, yeah. Before that, yeah, just jump back to mine, and I'll go through maybe just a slide or two of what we're installing to start up front.
Okay.
Yeah. So Hammer is not in the Half-Life folder. It is if you download the Half-Life SDK through Steam. It's actually in there, but I don't think they have version 3.5, which is what we want today.
Okay, so the SDK for those listeners is the software developers kit. It's like
Right.
a special edition with bells and whistles for developers. Okay.
Right. So the mapping program we're going to use is Hammer 3.5. This started as way back in the day, I think for Quake, called Worldcraft. It was version 1.6. If you have the Half-Life CD, they actually included Worldcraft 2.0 on the CD, which is what Valve used to make Half-Life maps. And it's simply been updated by them over a couple of years. It got renamed to Hammer because Blizzard was complaining about Worldcraft versus Warcraft confusion. So Valve said, "Okay, we're just going to change the name to Hammer." And I think that was probably in 2000 2001 timeframe. And we reached Hammer 3.5 is the last release they made in, I think, 2002 or so.
Okay.
So that's what we'll be using. There are more modern alternate programs out there. These two that are mentioned, Sledge and Jackhammer, are essentially replacements for Hammer in that they function a lot like Hammer and look a lot like Hammer, so the interface isn't that different. And Sledge is still in an alpha state. Jackhammer, I think, is a little more mature. I won't be covering those in detail, but if you work with us and understand Hammer, you'll have a really good head start on understanding either of those programs.
Okay. And one thing, I never really understood why it was called Hammer. I don't know why they didn't call it like Wrench, because that like Wrench seems to fit in better with valves and stuff. But I mean,
Yeah, my old the old Worldcraft logo was it was sort of a hammer. You'll see it actually when we install it. It'll still have that same logo. So I assume they had a hammer sort of in a sphere, like looking like a world or a globe or something like that.
all right.
So yeah, who knows?
Okay.
I'm not sure why they chose hammer, but they did. So.
Okay. Sorry.
And this is where we'll start. We'll download these 4 files shown on the in the Google Drive to begin with. Hammer _v34.exe is the main Hammer installer, so I would start with that.
Okay. Let me take that off. Go back to you. Oh, poop. Okay. Here we go. Sorry. What am I trying to do?
I don't know.
Yeah, okay. I took my my face off the thing because it would have been blocking the the list.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No, it's not your fault. My fault. Okay, so we're going to be installing 4 programs, or at least files, that will allow us to begin creating maps. Yes.
Right.
And you want to run through those briefly now, or as we do them?
Well, you could. Yeah, we can just go ahead and if you have these 4 files, Philip, or we'll soon have these 4 files. We can just start working from here.
Okay.
But this screen sort of outlines the instruction at the moment.
Okay.
And the instructions what we'll go through to install Hammer and its related files. So we will get to those the four files that are not highlighted. We will soon get to those because those are what's required for the compile programs to transfer our raw map data into a playable map in Half-Life.
Okay, all right. So will I switch your screens now to my screen, or do you want to go through?
Yeah,
more?
sure. If you have those 4 files downloaded, let's go ahead and install those.
No, negative. I'm going to download everything. Everything's going to be from scratch here. So
Okay, yeah.
what I'm going to do is, on my desktop, I'm going to create a folder, and of course this is completely up to the user here. I mean, they can download the files to wherever they want. Wherever they install them is a different matter, but so I'm going to do that now, and with the users watching. So the first one I need to download is Hammer 3.4, and I'm going to download that. Hopefully it'll give me a choice. Okay, it's automatically saved it. That's a little. All right.
You can change the view in the of the files on the Google Drive if you want. In the upper right, there's a little icon you can switch if you like.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
might be easier to view on the screen that you're streaming. So.
All right. So what I'll do is I'll just make that fraction bigger. Close that. Yeah. I can make the list, but then it puts your name there. You okay with that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. So the next one I need to download is is that one.
That one. Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Well,
Sorry.
you'll need Half-Life FGD, the third one down,
Yeah. I
and
don't know
you need
what's.
Hammer test build.
I don't know why it's not downloading for me. Maybe it has.
Oh yeah, that's what's in the zip file. If you're still looking at the ZHLT.
Oh, okay. Maybe I clicked the. I am, yeah. So why? Okay. So why does that not download then?
It's a good question. That's why I zipped it. I don't know why it's not.
Okay.
Is there like a download button or something like that?
Let me switch views again.
Wait, yeah. Go ahead. What about the top there? Oh no, that's all.
Yeah. I mean, if I click here, it opens. If I click here, it opens. So maybe if I change views.
Is anybody else trying to download that last file there?
No, it just opens. Okay.
Yeah.
And if I right click, I don't really get any choices. Okay.
Okay. Well, I can create a Dropbox link in the for the moment if we like.
Okay. So what's the other file that I need to download?
You need the Hammer
test build.
Test build and Hammer FGD.
Okay, now that's not downloading either. All right, we apologise for the. We apologise.
On top of the screen, there's a download button.
Yeah,
up there. So the
add to
arrow
drive.
with the arrow with the line under it.
All right, so if I click here, download. Okay, fine. That was all my fault.
Okay.
So then we go back
Try that
down
with the
to
other
here.
files?
Yep.
Yeah.
Boom. Okay. There we go. That one's done. And the other file I need to download is the FGD file.
Right.
This
Forge game data.
Forge game data. Right. So I've got those. All right. So I've got those in my. They happen to go automatically to a download folder. So I'm moving them to here. So I've got them all in one place.
Yeah,
Right.
okay, good.
I now have those files. Okay. My apologies to the viewers, but I mean they might experience that as well. So.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't obvious to me either. Yeah.
So, all right. So let me empty the recital bin. Okay. So I've now got those files. What would you like me to do with them?
Okay, we're gonna start with Hammer _v34.exe. That's the main installer for Hammer
Okay.
3.4, and then we'll overwrite it with a 3.5 executable.
All right. So I double click this or no?
Yep. Double click Hammer v34, and then choose a folder to install it in.
Okay.
And I would recommend a couple things. First, that you install it on the same drive as Steam, if possible.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll browse. People can see all of the things that I have. So here.
And second, I would try to keep the whole folder name, including the drive letter, as short as possible.
Okay.
In other words, I wouldn't put it to program files / level design academy / session 1 / hammer 3. That type of thing.
Okay.
The thing is, at least in the old days, I think it's still true. In the compile tools are run in DOS essentially, from a batch file. So they run in the console. I shouldn't say DOS, but they run in the console. They have a limit on the total number of characters you have with your path, your folder path.
All right.
So the shorter you can keep that, the better. My game drive is drive D, so I have Steam on there, and my install directory is D /hammer to keep it as short, physically in terms of number of characters, as short as possible.
Okay. So it doesn't need to be under Steam. It just needs to be on the same drive as Steam. So I'll call it Hammer as well. So I created a folder within my program files, but it doesn't even need to be program files, does it? It can just be on the same drive as Steam.
Yeah, you can put it under program files. I wouldn't though.
All right, I'll move it. No problem. I'm okay with that. So now I've just got,
on your C drive.
on my C drive, I now have a folder Hammer, no capitals, So
All right, perfect.
I'll go back. I'll choose that, and then I'll illegal character detected. Okay, we'll have to ignore that. I agree.
Illegal character detected.
Yeah, I've got no
Okay,
idea.
I'm not seeing your screen at the moment. By the way, it's frozen on the Half-Life, the Google Drive.
Ah, okay. Maybe. Browser. Okay.
Yeah, I would change that to Hammer if it's defaulting to Valve. Oh, I'm answering a question in the chat, by the way. If
Okay.
it's defaulting to Valve Hammer Editor as your folder name, I would just change it to Hammer.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I've just called it Hammer. I put it under C. C : /Hammer. I'm
Yep.
installing it. It says that it's going to sort of add it to. Okay. So I just click yes. And I'm not going to place a shortcut on my desktop because I'm not really a Oh, I am.
Okay.
Apparently,
Yeah.
Don says I am.
No.
No, I'm okay with that. Okay. Normally
No,
I don't, but
ideally you want a shortcut somewhere, but if you have the folder open, you can just run the exe from the folder. It doesn't matter that much. So yeah, that's user preference.
right. So I just clicked the box that says it may not have installed because I've had a little bit of trouble with that. So now if I
Oh,
go,
that's okay. Yeah, that came up for me too. Don't worry about that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
That's
now-
because the installer's from 2001, not
Okay.
not 2016.
All right. So sorry everybody who I didn't realise they weren't seeing my screen. So now you should be able.
It's still a little cut off, Philip. I'm only seeing the upper left corner of your screen. In other words, I can't even see the entire dialog box where it's installing Hammer.
Right. Okay. How about now?
I'll give it 20 seconds.
My apologies, users. It's like a disaster, really. But it's not a difficult process. It's basically, just to summarise, you create a folder on the same folder as where you have Steam installed. It doesn't need to be within any other subfolders. And call it what you want. I've called it Hammer because that's really the name of the program. And then in a few seconds, it should.
Yeah, it looks good to me. I see your two Explorer windows side by side.
Okay, good.
So.
Okay, my window is frozen here. So yeah, you can see in this particular one, it's in this window, it's got C and then Hammer, and then the other one is from the desktop, which was the place where I downloaded everything.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. So the next step will be to unzip Hammer_test build,
Okay.
or simply you don't need to unzip it. It's only one folder, one file in it.
Okay.
So it's got an updated Hammer.exe that we're simply going to click and drag to replace the Hammer exe that was just installed.
Okay. So what I've done is I've actually unzipped it and copied it to that folder on my desktop.
Okay.
But then I can right-click, drag it across, let go. I'm going to copy there, and it's going to ask me either to replace it or keep both files or don't copy. Well, I'm going to copy and replace it.
Yep.
And that's it. And I leave it in my other folder in case I have a problem. Okay? That's step 2 done.
The next step will be the Half-Life FGD file,
Okay, so
which again only contains one file.
Okay. I will open that and copy it there. All right.
So quick background, the FGD is indeed a text file, as somebody mentioned in the chat, that holds the sort of the translation between the what we use in Hammer, the names of things we use in Hammer and their properties, to a format that the game code can understand, the Half-Life code itself can understand. So.
Okay. All right. So I've extracted that file, which gives me half-life.fgd, and I put that in my Design Academy folder. Do I need to move that or?
Yes, that will go. So if in your left window, if you click on FGD,
Okay.
and then Half-Life.
Okay. And I'm just going to replace the one that's already in there.
Yes, you can rename what's there if you want.
Okay.
Half-Life Old or Half-Life 3.
Can you tell me what the difference is? One is just an updated version.
One is updated to work with Hammer 3.5, which means you
Okay.
can see the models in world in Hammer, which we didn't used to be able to do. In other words, they were just colored blocks. Now we can actually see, instead of something being a purple block in the map in our editor view, it's actually a scientist or Barney or a grunt or whatever, and we can actually see, or Gordon for the player start. You actually see Gordon instead of just a colored block.
Okay. All right. So I've just moved that there. People are asking about my Windows. This is Windows 7, but it's set to classic mode. I don't like any of the fancy Windows versions. I just got it as basic as possible. So that's an answer to that question. All right. So I've now just what I did is I renamed the other one in case I wanted it. So I renamed it and then copied the other one in there. It's only 61 kilobytes, so it's not a big problem.
Yeah, no harm done there. You'll have that backup in case you ever want to use it. But so the last thing we'll do is the ZHLT-UNC zip. Again, there's only a single file in this zip folder.
Okay. So I've extracted that now.
Okay, and so in the left window, you want to go back up to Hammer and then into the Tools directory.
Okay.
And this is where that WAD file will go.
Okay, there's no other WADs in there. There's no other WAD files, but that doesn't matter.
Oh. Okay. Well, in that case, we should wait.
Oh, I'll move
because
it back.
this will, if we copy it now, it will be overwritten when we install something later. So
right. I've moved it back.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, you can copy it, but it will probably be overwritten. So the again, for background, a WAD file in Half-Life, as opposed to Doom, for example, a WAD file in Half-Life simply contains textures, and that's it. And the ZHLT.WAD is a special texture file that originally came with Zoner's Half-Life tools, which are a special version of the compile tools that we'll install next.
Okay.
That have some special like tool textures in it. For example, I put developer textures, orange textures like you use in Source development. Somebody converted them or made them for Gold Source. So I've included them in this WAD. So this WAD is this specific ZHLT.WAD gets automatically included in any map that we compile.
Okay.
So it's a good idea to keep any textures that are common that you're always going to want to use no matter what kind of map you're making. This doesn't contain things like concrete textures or water textures. It simply contains developer textures and some special other clip textures, for example, clip brushes and invisible wall brush.
Okay.
Which, you kind of want to avoid sometimes, but sometimes you also need that in Half-Life to prevent the player from getting somewhere. So it contains special tool textures like that.
Okay, so what we're saying is that it's possible for people to create their own textures and then create a file which is called the WAD, the WAD file, that they would use to create maps. But if they did that, they would have to release the WAD file when they release the map. Is that right?
No, there's actually, so ZHLT gets automatically included when you compile, but as a user, you can also specify other WADs to be included in the map. In other words, embedded into the map.
Oh, okay.
So you don't have to distribute your WAD file separately.
Okay.
But I'm simply using this because it's automatically done. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's just there. It's a tools. I use it as my sort of catch-all tools. Texture tool WAD file.
Okay, all right.
We are actually installing Vulkan's tools, Irby. Next step.
Okay, all right. So
responding to a chat I mentioned in the chat there.
Yep, no problem. So sorry. Okay, there we go. All right.
So at this point, it's sort of up to you. My original plan was to keep installing the compiler files and programs, but if you want to take a break and actually open Hammer and start to map a little bit, we can come back to that later.
Well, how much longer will those other files take? I mean, while we're in the process of installing them, I'm okay to do it. It's something we're ultimately going to need. Yes, I mean,
yes.
We can't play.
We'll need later today. Yes, we'll need in order to play or compile map. We'll need this installed. So
right,
if you want to do it up front, it's hopefully about 5 minutes. So.
Okay, all right then. So.
Okay, so if we go back to, if you want to flip back to my screen at the moment.
Okay. All right, so we're back in yours.
Okay, so the compiler program we'll be installing is called NEMS Batch Compiler, or Nemesis. Was a coder that made a lot of Half-Life and Gold Source tools back in the day. It's the one I still use. I do list an alternate program by the mighty Adam, who's actually in our chat at the moment, called the Compilator. And so that other people can use that if they like. Ultimately, compiling is... I think both programs actually just generate a batch file to run. So if you really wanted to hand code your own batch file to just run these 4 compile programs, you're welcome to do that if you want to dig into it, but I won't be covering that here.
Okay. Let me just tell the viewers or the listeners, the link to all of these files will be in the video that we upload. It was the link that was shown right at the beginning. So even though Don's little icon is covering that last section of the mighty atoms, those links are just there to sort of show you where they are. But we've got all of these files in one handy folder, which will be available to everybody. So
right, and actually this presentation that I'm flipping through online is also in that folder. So people are welcome to browse through it and click the links. Just if not downloading these programs, just for background and understanding that there are alternatives out there for these things.
Yeah. Okay.
So that the link is back in the upper left there, the bit.ly LDA files link. Link leads you right back to that Google Drive page.
Yep.
So in this case, we'll want the 3 highlighted files there.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to switch back to me now. I'm going to switch back to me, and here we go. So I'll select this one. I'll download it. It's going to download to my other folder, and then okay, we'll do that in a second. And then I also need to download the 2 how do you pronounce this? These Vulsken.
Yeah, I don't. He's from China, I think.
Okay.
I could just call him Vulcan, just for
okay,
just for shortcut. He's never said how to actually pronounce it. But so a short history of the compile tools in the tools folder that we briefly looked at in your Windows Explorer there a couple minutes ago. You may have seen a handful of exe files. It was like QCSG and QBSP. .exe. Those were the compile tools that Valve used when they made Half-Life, but they've since released the code to these tools, and people have really added on to it. So in other words, we can do a lot more simply because of the compile tools now in Half-Life than they could in 1998. Lighting is better, limits are higher for things that the engine can still handle, but the compiler tools could not. So the compile tools have been improved over the years. First by Zoner, who I can't remember Zoner's name offhand, but he went to work for Gearbox, and I think is still at Gearbox.
Oh, okay.
And then by a couple other people, and the latest one to pick it up is Vulcan, who is a Chinese coder from what I understand. And he's been mostly posting on the Sven Co-op forums, since they are one of the most active gold source communities to this day. And his version 34 there was just released, I think, in about September last year. So that's how recent these compile tools are.
All right, great. Now, before we go on, I want to address something that we should have done in the introduction, which is why we're using such an old engine. Because there's a bit of chat going on. Oh, Philip should be learning Source because it's so much easier and everything. Well, think of this as I'm an enthusiast for trains and I love Steam. Pardon the pun there with, of course, what we use. I'm interested in the Half-Life game. I want to make mods for the Half-Life game. I'm not suggesting that this engine or the process that we're going through is easier just because the actual result looks a little bit more basic. But this is a hobby for me. I'm not looking to become a level designer. I want to learn Half-Life. I want to make mods for Half-Life. So maybe the diesel engine is the better one, but a lot of people, especially older people, they got this like nostalgic feeling for things, and I feel that some things should be kept alive, and I want to learn gold source mapping because I want to make a Half-Life mod. I'm not saying I won't learn other things in the future. I'm not saying that at all, but this is what I want to do now. So Don's willing to help me. So that's why we're doing it. Anything you want to add to why you're still making mods or games for an engine that's 18 years old?
I don't feel the need to argue for it too hard. I mean, it's
okay.
The one thing you can say is that there are still gold source games being released. Earlier this year, we saw Sven Co-op 5.0 released as a full game on Steam, and they actually had some access to the engine from Valve to update graphics and things like that. So I guess going back to your original question half an hour ago, yes, there are maybe slightly different versions of the gold source engine, but only I think since the Sven coders got their hands on the actual engine code.
Okay.
And last year saw the release of Counter-Strike Nexon Zombies by Nexon, another Chinese group if I remember right, which again used the gold source. So it was a version of Counter-Strike with zombies, but it again used the gold source engine and it was a full game. So there are still games and of course mods being released with gold source.
All right. A bit like, I just thought of it, a bit like why I love mechanical watches instead of digital watches or quartz watches. There's a nostalgia element to those things.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So here we go.
Okay,
I've now got these
the
three.
files.
Yeah, I've got the files. You want to run me through doing
Yep,
something?
we will start batch compiler 312.exe. That's the installer for the main batch compiler program.
All right, let me just move them across into the folder that I've been using, so I've got everything together. All right, so I need to do the batch compiler. I double click this.
Yep. I assume the batch compiler exe, yes.
Yeah, my apologies, yes, exe. All right, okay.
And then that should step you through an install.
Let me just,
And
sorry, my firewallers tell me, what do you want to do? So I've told it to run unlimited. All right. So I'm just going through the process. Now, where do I put the batch compiler?
You can put this under Hammer if you want.
Okay, is that a good place?
Not,
it's currently
at a minimum,
under my program files, but
yeah, that's just a suggestion. I would either put that under, batch compiler in the root directory, in other words, C batch compiler, or under Hammer.
okay, I'll put
As
it
long
under
as it's
Hammer.
on the same drive. Yeah.
Okay, I'll put it under Hammer
That's good.
because then it's
Just,
all
yeah,
together. Do I
I
need
would
a
put
shortcut for
under
it?
a batch. I would put a batch compiler folder under Hammer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You want a shortcut somewhere. It's up to you whether you want to put it on the desktop or just go to the folder when we need to run it later.
All right, now it's asking me to launch it, but I don't want to do that, do I?
Yeah, try it.
Oh, okay.
See if it runs. If it doesn't,
Yep.
we'll have to install.
Yep, it's
does run,
running,
okay,
but
okay.
it's just like blank. It's just like a blank
That's fine.
window.
Yeah.
Close
Okay,
it.
you can actually close it now. Yeah.
All right.
I think so. If it doesn't run for anybody, you will need to probably download that last file that we didn't download yet in the Google Drive. That's
Okay.
the .NETFX.exe,
Okay.
and that's the Microsoft .NET Framework version 1.1, which is really old, but I think Batch Compiler might still need it to run correctly.
Okay.
So,
All right.
you can also get that from Microsoft. If you don't trust my link, on the presentation that I have, there's the full link to the Microsoft site where you can download that framework.
Okay. And we should probably say that these files are available outside of the bit.ly link that we've got. Don has just put them together to make life easy for the viewers. All
Yeah.
of those files are publicly available. They haven't been modified by Don, except maybe this
The ones with the
Vulkan one.
unk-
And
The
one
ones with the unk on the end have been,
yeah.
yes.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. Okay. What's next then?
Okay, yes, good question.
Specifications
next.
or the ZHLT?
Let's do the specs, the specifications.
Okay. So I'll open that
It doesn't
up.
matter what order we do these in, to be honest.
Okay, so I've got 4 files. .bsc.
Yeah, so these will go under the
BCS.
batch compiler folder. There should be a
Specifications. All right.
Yeah, you just want to copy and paste. These should not override anything that's in there.
No, they don't have any of the same names. So
Okay, good.
Okay, that's done.
Yep, you can close that, and
Yep.
then the what's the other one? ZHLT.
Yep.
Vulcan's ZHLT.
Okay, yeah, so I've got 2 files and a folder, a tools file, a readme text, and then an src zip file.
Okay, you only need what's in the tools folder.
Okay.
You can open the README if you want. The source is actually the source code for the tools. If he's continued the legacy of these being open source tools once Valve released the code. But you just want what's in the tools directory to be in the tools directory under Hammer.
Okay, so there we go.
So go back up to Hammer and then
Yep.
Tools.
And I copy all of those things over.
Yeah.
Okay, will they overwrite anything?
I don't think so.
No, let's have a look.
Except the ZHLT,
lights.
but we did not put it in there.
No,
lights, that's
the
okay.
lights. Yeah.
Lights.rad, yeah, you can overwrite that.
Okay, overwrite that. There we go. Done. And then we got that
Okay.
ZHLT that we didn't copy over yet.
Right, so go back to that on the right-hand window.
Yep.
And then copy and overwrite the ZHLT.wad.
Do I want to save the original? Is there any benefit for that, just in case?
If you want, yeah, you can just rename it.
Okay. Okay. All right. So there we go. So then I'll just move that over. Okay. That's significantly bigger. It's like 10 times as big, 10 times bigger.
Mine?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I threw a lot of handy tools in that, so
All right. Perfect.
it's still pretty small for a texture file.
Mighty Atom is saying that I can safely remove all of the old tools. I mean, I haven't done that, but because I
You
wouldn't
can
know what they are
yeah.
now.
If you need to save space, so the all the Q tools, including VIS doesn't have a Q in front of it, but that's one of the Quake tools as well. You can delete those. Those are replaced by what we just installed, which are the HLBSP and HLCSG and whatnot.
Okay.
Those
all
are
right.
what's called Zoners Half-Life tools, or in this case Vulcan's custom Half-Life tools.
Okay, I'll leave those in because I'm not sure which ones to take out. I know you just told me, but we're talking like 100 kilobytes. Yeah. It's not a big problem for anybody.
No, and in the next step, we'll actually point Batch Compiler to which ones to use.
Okay.
So if you really wanted to use the old Quake tools or Quake-based tools that Valve used, you're welcome to.
All right. So just a quick question from Pan. He's asking about the .NET fix. This is basically from Microsoft that allows people to distribute applications without having to include redundant code that can be found on a computer. But older applications, they need some of the new things that Microsoft have updated. Is that people are telling us it's the .NET framework. So
yeah, as I understand it, it's the version 1.1 of the .NET framework. So it's possible if Batch Compiler runs okay without it, then you don't need it. But I think you'll just simply get an error as soon as you try to open Batch Compiler. If it doesn't work, then you need this framework. So that's all it is.
Okay. So I haven't downloaded it because we tested the Batch Compiler and it worked. So
okay. Yep. Good.
Lovely.
And now we will actually start Batch Compiler and do some quick setup there.
All right. So I go to Batch Compiler folder, and then I go to Batch Compiler exe. Yes?
Yep.
Double click.
Yes. Yes.
Boom. And we get this box coming up. All right. I'm going to move it to the right.
Yeah,
I'm going to move it down there. Yep, no problem.
Okay, let me actually open it so I can follow along with you here.
Sure.
Oh, except I've already set mine up. So. Okay, I think the first step we want to do. You have the window open? Yes.
I do.
Is go to specifications in the menu.
Uh-huh.
And choose. You should see Vulcan Basic -unc.
Vulcan Basic. Yep. Click
in
that.
the list. Choose that, and that should populate with your window with a handful of tabs and some things in the stages window on the right.
Okay. Yep.
Should see 5 things: CSG, BSP, VIS, RAD, and Batch.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, now on the tab, so those are the 4 steps to compile a program. CSG does, if you can see the window there, constructive solid geometry. It determines what's solid and what's not in your map.
Okay.
The BSP creates the BSP tree, which is I don't know how to explain it, but it's sort of a logical tree of the binary space partitions of areas and nodes in your map.
Okay.
And I don't know the details, and I don't think you need to know the details. But it's more to do with creating the BSP file that Half-Life needs.
Yeah, viewers might recognise. Sorry to interrupt you, Don. Viewers might
Yeah.
recognise the extension BSP as being the actual map that we play with, the actual file that we open when we want to play things. Even in the new source, it's still called BSP.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So at this stage, as it compiles your map, it runs CSG first and then BSP. As soon as BSP is finished, you actually have a playable BSP file, but it's ugly. It has no lighting, and it has no calculations on what can be seen from from where you are.
Okay.
In other words, the entire map is rendered 100% of the time.
Okay.
So it's so far from optimized, it's awful, and it's so far from pretty, it's ugly. So that's why we run the next two steps. VIS does the visibility matrix, which determines from wherever you're standing and looking in the map what should be rendered to the in the engine.
Okay.
So it doesn't try to draw the entire map 100% of the time. It's based on where you're looking and where you're standing, what can be seen from what. For example, if there's several rooms between you and the Gargantua, it's not going to draw the Gargantua room at all until you get closer.
Okay.
And which optimizes things for speed and performance and things like that.
Alrighty. Then we got rad.
And then the rad, it does radiosity, which is lighting. And it's actually simply split into two tabs there, just because there's so many options we can set when we run rad.
So it's not radical. It's like way cool, man. No.
Yeah.
Radiosity. Okay.
Radiosity, yeah. So like I said, it's just split into two tabs just for convenience, since there's a lot of lighting tweaks that have been added over the years. So. And
we're not going to be doing anything with these. We might set something, but we're not going to have to do. I mean, people are looking at this and saying, "My God, this is so complicated. Why can't you just open up an editor and start?" But these are just things that you need to do once. These are just setting everything up at the beginning so that what you get is what you expect to get.
Right. Yeah, we'll check maybe a couple of these when we go to compile our first map, but for the most part, once you set it, you kind of forget it until maybe your very last polished map where you want to tweak the lighting just right, or you want to see if you can improve the lighting but not hit performance too much. So it just, there's a ton of options here, but you don't need to know them at this point. We'll go through them when we need them.
Yeah, okay, good. And then we're on to shared.
Yeah, and then shared, that's just FYI for the most part. These are shared among all four of the tools.
Okay.
So, for example, chart and estimate both give you sort of extra information as you compile. You'll see the main compile output, besides a BSP file, is a text log of what actually ran during your compile. And if there are any problems, they'll show up in this text log.
Okay.
Chart and estimate just kind of increase the amount of information you get in that.
All right. And then
let's look at batch, and we'll actually check some of these at the moment. So you want to check everything in the left column that's recommended file deletions.
Okay, so all of them.
Yep. And then check everything in the middle column, which are recommended file functions, if they're not checked already.
Okay, so I've got three in the middle one: BSP, RES, PTS.
Right. So during the compile process, a lot of sort of extra and temporary files are generated.
Okay.
That's all this is. So we have the left-hand column is just cleaning up all the crap that we're not going to need after the compile.
Okay.
The middle one, the BSP is clearly the playable map we have at the end, and telling that to copy after the compile, copies it from the working directory where it's doing the compiling to the playable folder in Half-Life.
Okay.
So we can simply start Half-Life and say map, whatever, and it runs.
Alrighty. Okay.
And then the other thing we'll do is check all 5 boxes on the right in the stages window. So
all right.
Place a check mark there. Yep.
Roger.
And then at this point we're ready to save it. So, we need to set options first. So options, setup.
Yep, I've got 4 tabs.
Yep, go to stage paths, second tab.
Yep.
And this is where we'll point it to the exe files that we unzipped into the tools directory.
Okay.
So highlight CSG and press the ... at the bottom.
Okay.
Or is
Just having a look in the chat. The Mighty Atom is telling us that he wouldn't recommend deleting the lin and the PRT files because they can be useful for tracking leaks in your map. But then he said, but for now it's okay. So
yeah, okay. Actually, it's not the PRT file that you use, isn't it?
okay.
It's
But
one of the other files I think
we
you can run. I think it's the PTS file that you run to track leaks. But anyway, yeah, we can.
We can change that later. All right,
Yeah.
and we'll explain what a leak is later as well. So,
Oh yes.
all right. So I click on the CSG, and do I do anything? Do I need to set the path?
Yeah. At the bottom where it says CSG path,
Yep.
click the dot 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 to the
Yep.
right,
Okay.
and then browse to your tools directory under Hammer.
Tools directory under Hammer. Roger.
Yeah,
and I've
we will
got two
in just a
choices.
second. Taxes, we will in just a second, but this is necessary setup, unfortunately.
Yep.
We'll have to go through this before we see a map in Half-Life.
Yep.
So
Okay, so I've got
it's
two choices.
painful, but we're almost done. So,
Yeah, no.
Yeah. So if you have
Right.
a 64-bit operating system,
I think I do.
then you choose the x64 link.
Right.
If not, choose the other hlcsg.exe.
Right. I do.
And if you're not sure, choose the one without 64.
Okay, I'm 99.999% sure I'm 64.
You can check by going to my computer real quick if you want. So,
No, I'm fine. It's a 64-bit. Yeah.
Yeah, so
BSP.
choose that, and then just repeat. Same thing. You'll have to, unfortunately, hopefully you don't need to browse back. Hopefully
No,
will
it goes straight
automatically
to the
open your
same.
tools.
So I just choose the same program again.
Well, it's now BSP, not CSG.
Okay. Yep, you're
Yes,
right.
These are different. So yeah,
Okay.
just make sure it should only look for that type of file. In other words, you can't pick the wrong one
Okay. All
at each
right.
stage. Yeah, repeat for VIS and RAD.
Yep, you're right. It's showing me only the ones that I can. All right. Good. Okay, so they're all set. Can't make that window any bigger. And then click OK, or do I need to do anything else in the other three tabs?
Yep, we need to go to the variables
Right.
tab,
Okay.
and we'll only need to set the output path here. And same thing, highlight output and click the dot 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 in the lower right.
Okay. Yeah. And this does bring up a new window. Okay. I'm being told that I goofed, but we'll come back to that in a second. You chose GCSE for the. Okay. All right. Let me go back a stage.
Yeah,
For
I
the-
see what he says there. Okay,
for
I
the
don't think that's
paths-
possible though.
He said you chose CGS for the BSP stage.
It should say
Oh.
right there. You should be able to read the path. in
Yeah,
the
no,
window.
he's right. I did. But
Oh, you did. How did you do that?
you know what? It's because I didn't select anything. I just clicked OK, but it had the file
Oh.
name down from before. Well
Okay.
spotted. So that gives me a
That's
chance
good.
to
That would
just.
that saved us some time later chasing.
Yeah. Okay.
an error. Yeah.
Well done. Thank you. Thank you for that. All right. Good.
Mhm.
Oh, and I clicked OK. Damn it. Set up. So those paths are set. Okay. So variables, output, okay. So browse for a folder.
Here we're going to pick where we want the playable BSP to be copied. So
Okay.
I would pick your maps folder under Valve, under Half-Life, and in your Steam installation. If we have, and we will get to this in a later tutorial, if we have our own mod folder, we would choose the maps folder in our mod folder. But at the moment, we're just going to play this in Half-Life, vanilla Half-Life.
Right, so I go to Steam, and then I go to Steam Apps, and then I go to Common, and then I go to Half-Life,
Right?
and then
And then
within Half-Life, Valve. Let me just clarify, there was a Valve Valve underscore HD.
That's
Well,
just the high def. It's just the HD pack for
All right,
models.
okay.
There may also be a Valve underscore add-ons directory,
Negative.
which we could use. Okay, you can create that and use as an alternate if you really wanted to, but we can just put it in the Valve Maps directory.
Okay,
instead.
so I'll just choose Valve Maps. Okay,
Yep.
it's a shame that this box can't get any bigger for you to see the full path, but
I
okay.
know, yeah.
All right, that's fine. It's going into the Maps folder, and then I click OK.
And yeah, let's click OK. That's
Or
fine.
presets, or
Yeah, let's go to presets
okay.
and click Add.
Okay.
Can we do that? Yeah, no, sorry, we can't do that yet. We need to
Okay.
save it first. So just
Alright.
click OK. We're done here.
We're done.
We'll come back to this.
Okay. let me just tell you, the process we're going through is very useful. Let me just sort of,
Yeah, it's not just that. It's a matter of being frustrated now or frustrated later when you're desperate to play your map and you can't. So, so the thing is, once we go through this, it's
find somebody who shows you how to do things in 2 seconds. But we're not in it for that. We're in it to do it properly and slowly and carefully for the people who want to do it slowly and carefully. So I apologise if you're frustrated, especially if you're a mapper. But if you're a non-mapper, the process we're going through is very useful. Let me just sort of,
Yeah, it's not just that. It's a matter of being frustrated now or frustrated later when you're desperate to play your map and you can't. So, so the thing is, once we go through this, it's kind of done.
Yes.
Once everything's set up, other than tweaking settings here and there and choosing which map we want to compile, we don't really have to mess with batch compiler.
All right.
So.
Okay, so shall I save now?
Yeah.
I click save.
You want to save preset, right? Is that what it's asking?
No, I've already. Well, I mean, I've been to setup and presets, but there's nothing I can do in presets.
Yeah. So go to file instead of hitting the save button. Go to file and then save preset.
I've got save preset as.
Yeah, do that.
Do that. All right. Now, where will I save that?
I would go under batch compilers. Maybe create a presets directory.
So within batch compiler, I've got currently a specifications directory, but I would create a new one. And
make a presets directory.
Presets. Roger that.
And then give the BCP name whatever you want. My first map or test compile or whatever.
Does it matter if it's uppercase or lowercase?
No, it doesn't matter. It can be have spaces, whatever.
All right. So I've called it LDA hyphen preset fillet. There we go. All right, and I save. Boom. Okay, done.
And now we can open Hammer. How about that?
Okay, so I can close this batch compiler.
Yeah, if you want, you can leave it open too in the background. It's up to you.
Oh, okay, I'll leave it open. All right, so I go back to Hammer, and I double click on hammer.exe. Yes.
Yes.
There's a little hesitancy in your voice there. You're making me nervous, but I've done it anyway.
No, you're right. I was trying to do something myself, so that's it.
All right, so that opens up.
Unfortunately, we will have to go through some setup in Hammer before we can use it too.
Yeah.
But this should literally only take 5 minutes.
All right. Before we do that, I just want to make sure that it appears on the screen because.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah. Wow, you guys are so much more in front than I am. I'm still waiting for it to appear. All right, now it's time for the meat. Unless you're a vegetarian, in which time for the tofu. All right, and so bringing up the hammer.exe, it brings up this application and it brings up this dialog box.
Right.
Okay.
That's simply because nothing has been set up yet in Hammer. So we will proceed to do that now.
So you can yes.
Well, you can just say it's up to you. This just opens the help file. Which is
this is the guide. Okay.
Right. It's just the guide. So anybody who's new to Hammer, I highly recommend the help file. It actually has a ton of good info in it.
Okay.
But at the moment, we don't need to look at it.
So I'll say no because you're the help file. All right.
And then we will go immediately to Tools, Options if it doesn't open. If the configure valve adder, it might automatically. If you say no with this dialog, it might automatically open this window. I'm not sure.
Okay, I've got a window that's opened that says configure valve hammer editor.
Right.
So some people that might not have happened. They would have had to have gone to the main menu in the sort of the top left and click on Tools. I can't do
Tools
it now.
Options.
I can't do it now because I've got this open. Okay, and that gives me 6 windows, 6 tabs.
Right. So the first thing we want to do is go to game configurations, which is why that dialog box popped up in the first place. This should be empty.
All right. Yep. Looks empty to me.
Yeah, so we're going to add a configuration called Half-Life. If you're mapping for Counter-Strike, call it Counter-Strike, whatever your mod name is.
So where do I do that? Do I do that in Edit or Add?
Yep, go to Edit.
Edit.
And then Add.
And then Add, and I put a name.
Yep, just
and I call it Half-Life.
Yep.
Regular Half-Life. Okay.
Sure.
And then close.
And then make sure that's active in the configuration box now. There should only be one. In other
Yes.
words, the
Okay.
drop-down box. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we need to add the FGD file that we downloaded and installed before. So we go to Add, next to the game data files.
Game data files. Add.
And now we select the FGD, which is Hammer slash FGD slash Half-Life.
Okay, and we've got two here. We've got the old one that I renamed, and we've got the new one. So I select the basic one. All right, good.
Half-Life FGD, right?
Roger. Okay. Done.
There should be nothing to select in the next two boxes. There, in other words, there's only one setting for each.
Yeah.
So I would set, while we're at the default point entity class, click that drop down, and this is a list of point entities, and we'll get into that later.
Okay.
But you might want to select, say, ambient generic, the second one down, which is very commonly used point entity.
Okay. We'll explain what point entities are later. So if you're like, what is this? What am I doing? Don't worry, we'll do that. Okay.
And in this default solid entity, yeah, you can select something like func_door or func_wall. These are all user preference. So as you get more familiar with these entities, you might come back to this option box to set what the default one is.
All right, I'm going to put wall because you said wall, and I'm kind of a wall guy instead of a door guy. Now, the Mighty Atom is asking, do we want to set, did you also install the Vulcan's FGD?
No, I did not, and that's by choice. I think that's a
Okay.
little too advanced for the first few lessons here.
Okay.
We might come back to that, Adam, but I know it access, func detail and a couple other things, but yeah, too much detail at the moment, I think.
Yep, that's fine.
In my judgment. So the only other thing we need to set on this tab is the RMF directory at the very end.
Right. Okay, so I click Browse.
Yep, browse,
Yeah.
and then select, there should be a maps folder under Hammer.
Okay, my hammer, the one I installed. Okay, there is, and then I just click that.
Yeah,
Right.
you can also create other maps directories. For example, if you wanted to separate your Sven co-op maps from your single player maps, you can create any other directories that you want there. That's
Okay.
just for where it should look for where it should save the maps when you hit save. So
Okay, but we can create different configurations for this. So if I were mapping for a co-op game like Sven Co-op, I might create a new configuration. Is that right? Or not?
yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't let you change the RMF directory, I think.
Okay. All right then.
So Hammer, yeah, ideally it would. In other words, you swap from Half-Life to Counter-Strike or to Sven Co-op, it would change all these, but it doesn't. It only
Okay.
changes the FGD.
All right,
So,
fine. Okay.
yeah.
So then I haven't.
And then
do I click apply or?
You can click apply, it doesn't matter. We'll go to textures. We have to set up the textures tab as well before we do anything.
Okay. So I'm in the textures tab now. I've got 4 files in there. I can't see what they are because I can't resize the windows, but
Can't see what they are.
well, I
Okay.
mean, I've got. It just says program files, Steam / Steam apps / common.
These must have been left over from your previous install of Hammer. Okay, so we'll just select them all with
Yep.
Shift and remove.
Okay.
So people that just install this program may have just a simple placeholder there that says textures.wad or something like that.
Okay.
That's just a dummy placeholder. Just click that, hit remove, and then we will add the wads. But I think first, I highly recommend you copy the textures from Half-Life to a different directory.
Okay. So I've just removed those texture files.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
So before doing anything else here, I would open Explorer.
Okay.
Go back to your Valve folder under Half-Life. So Steam apps, Common, Half-Life, Valve.
Steam apps, common, Half-Life, Valve. Yep.
And we will copy 4 WAD files from this directory
Into my Hammer
into
folder.
somewhere under Hammer. Yeah, I would create maybe a texture subfolder under Hammer.
Okay, so let me do that now. All right, so textures under Hammer, and I'm looking back in my Valve folder. What am I looking for? I'm looking for WAD files. Am I? WAD
Yeah,
files.
but not all of them. We want I'll give them to you in alphabetical order.
Okay.
So you want decals,
Yeah.
Half-Life
Yeah.
.wad, liquids .wad,
Yeah.
and Xeno.wad,
Okay.
XENO.
All right. So I copy those over to my Hammer folder under textures. Okay,
Right.
I've done that.
Okay, now go flip back to Hammer,
Yep.
and now we're going to add those four. So
Okay.
click Add WAD,
Okay. Yep.
browse to that textures
I can select all
folder
of them
and
at once.
select all four. I think you can select all four at once and hit Open. Yeah.
Boom. Okay, done that. Yep.
And there's one more we want to add.
Okay.
Different directory. Go back to Add WAD,
Add WAD. Yep.
and then select ZHLT from the Tools folder. This is the custom ZHLT tools textures, essentially.
Okay. I don't have a ZHLT folder, but I've got the WAD in the
It's
tools.
in the Tools folder. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
That's fine.
So
Leave it there. Select that and add that. So you should have 5 now in your,
I do.
in your texture list. So this is where in the future we'll add a custom texture WAD that we're going to make, but not for a couple lessons yet. This is where you would add it.
All right.
There are a couple of other options which are kind of user preference that we can look at before we close this directory.
Okay.
Before we close this this pop-up
Yep.
window, go to 2D views.
2D views. Yep.
And I would recommend, if it's not checked in the upper right that says arrow keys nudge selected object or vertex,
Okay.
I would
check
check that. Yep.
Okay.
I would also check the one below it if it's not reorient primitives on creation in the active 2D window.
Okay. Done.
Let's see what else. Grid intensity, I would recommend turning that almost all the way down towards 0 in the slider bar midway through the.
Okay. Yeah, I see it. So in the,
Otherwise, your grid lines are very, very bright, and it's difficult to distinguish the blocks that you create from the grid background.
okay, so that will make more sense when people see it. But we basically got like a graph paper
yeah.
background, and this will change how bright those individual lights are. So do you want me to put it to 0 or really close?
You
to
can
0?
see we can come back here in a moment's notice. So
Okay.
that's good. That looks good where it is. It's maybe 10% or a little
Yeah.
less. Let's start with that. Size grid. Again, this is user preference and this is changeable on the fly, but I usually set it to 8.
8.
Yep.
Not 64. 8. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So one
And
thing, sorry to interrupt you again, Don. One thing to tell
Yep.
users is that just like all programs, people have got preferences, and Don's given us his, and many of these things, not all of them, should be or could be changed to what you want. So if you like bright lines, you can have bright lines. If you want the size of the grid to be bigger, you can change these things. But of course, at some point, somebody has to tell us what to start with, and we're going to follow with what Don says. Now, just before we go on, Pan has asked a question about why we copied those files over. Why did we copy the WAD files?
This may come back to user preference. Yeah, I prefer to keep separate copies just in case Half-Life updates inadvertently.
Okay.
And actually, this is somewhat of a legacy, right? So even back 2 years ago, before Steam Pipe, everything was packed into these GCF files.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than being, in other words, rather than seeing the WADs in the Half-Life Valve directory, they were embedded in a GCF file, which was some kind of zipped or compressed file.
Okay.
So you couldn't, in the past, you could not point Hammer to those texture files under Half-Life directly because they were embedded in a compressed file. So I would extract them, copy them to the Hammer folder like we just did. So some of this is maybe not necessary these days. Like Irby says, he usually installs Hammer right in the Half-Life folder.
Okay.
That's okay to do too if you want to. Yeah.
All right. So what we're doing is we're worrying about could there be a resonance cascade and we could lose access to all our files? Well, we've got copies. That's really what we're saying.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
One last preference to look at quickly in 3D views tab
Yep. Okay.
is I have to play with mouse Y inverted.
Okay.
I'm old school and I can't. So if when we're navigating around in 3D space, if you want to reverse your mouse Y axis, there's the checkbox for it. So.
Okay. I don't think I need to, but we might have to come back to that once we
And
start
now-
moving around.
Now we're done. You can hit OK and close it.
Okay, so it's telling me that there's a quick note. I've removed some texture files from the list. Those files will continue to be used during this session, but will not be loaded the next time you run Valve Editor. Okay, But we
Yeah,
don't care because we've got copies anyway. That's really
Yeah, well, and we removed and added, I think, the same 4 files, so
okay.
it's not. Yeah, it's not harmful.
All right. Now, just before we do that, I want to turn my light on because it's getting really dark in here. So just give me 1 second. Sorry.
Okay. I think.
Okay. And I just want to say to the people watching on YouTube, if we sort of start talking about old Pan and Irby and we start mentioning people's names, that's because Don and I, we're doing this live and people mention things and ask questions, so we refer to those things. But we will always mention what we're doing. But if you're wondering why, what are they talking about? It's because we're interacting with the live stream listeners at the same time. All right, so we're ready, are we?
Almost.
Okay.
So go back to your Valve directory in under Half-Life, under Steam,
Yep.
and we'll copy 2 more folders.
Okay.
And this is where Hammer 3.5 comes in versus old versions of Hammer.
Okay.
So we're going to copy the models and sprites directory
Okay.
to folders. Sorry, directories
To where?
under Hammer.
Okay. So I go back to Hammer on one side. So the sprites and the models directories are going to be copied into my Hammer installation.
Right.
Right.
Again,
Okay.
maybe if you had installed Hammer directly in a Half-Life directory, this may be an unnecessary step, but this
right.
is
Now
how
it's
we
telling
set
me
it up.
that I'm sorry to interrupt you, Don. It's telling me that there's already a sprites directory.
That's okay. Nothing will be overwritten. The only sprites in the Hammer directory at the moment are those internal to Hammer. So.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, hey, Maki, made it. Huh?
Okay.
We haven't actually mapped anything yet.
Yeah,
so
yeah. We've been setting up for the last hour and a half, but that's okay. No problem. We got to start somewhere.
All right. Now we can launch Hammer and open a map. How about that?
Okay, so we've got. I mean, Hammer's still open.
Oh, wait, did I forget something?
Oh no.
I think I did.
Oh no.
Well, I wanted to.
Back to the beginning.
Are those in the? Geez, are those in the Google Drive? I don't even know. Hang on, just a sec. The Half-Life map files, the Valve supplied Half-Life map files are not here, are they?
Are you talking about
You have those
BSPs or?
RMFs. I forgot to upload those. Well, let me see if I can find them at the moment, real quick. So these are example. Valve supplied a handful of RMFs from Half-Life that you can open.
Okay.
These are Hammer files.
Okay.
That you, give me just a moment, and I'll try to upload it. I thought I had it, but I did not. Yeah, crap.
Okay.
Okay, so now if we go back to the Google Drive.
Okay, and we refresh. Okay, we now have
Sorry,
Valve
I meant
map files.
Yeah, I meant for these. Yes, Valve map files. Grab
All right,
that.
so I'll download those. And
Sorry, I thought I had these uploaded already.
okay, no problem. I've downloaded them. I mean, that's why it's like a live stream. We're going to get these things. All right, good. Okay, so let me copy them over into the folder that I've got on the desktop. This one here. All right. Okay, so that's over there. Now I'll open these out. And I've got an RAD, an RMF, an RAD, an RMF. So 4 RMFs and
Yep.
2 RADs. Where do I put them?
I would leave the RAD files in place. We really won't need them. So I would copy the 4 RMFs to your Hammer/maps directory. So.
Right. Let me.
And if you want to flip back to my screen for just a moment, I'll give a little bit of background on on the types of map files that we're talking about, just to sort of set the record straight.
All right. So I've copied those over. So now I'll switch over to you. Okay. There we go. We're in you.
Okay, so when we say map files, it can be any of three type of files, and I apologize if I use them vaguely, but hopefully this will set the record straight. When we say RMF file, I think it stands for rich map format, and that's a proprietary format from Valve that is the map source. So in other words, we create a new map in Hammer and we save it. It'll save as an RMF file. Now that RMF is only readable by Hammer. You can't play that in Half-Life. That needs to be, as we set up the compiler, you need to compile the map before you can play it.
Okay.
Another format that's common is the .map file, .map file, and that's actually what is used by the compile tools. So, for example, in Hammer we'll save our map as an RMF, and then we will export it as a map file, MAP file, and then the compile tools run on that map file.
Okay.
You can also import map files into Hammer, and they are just text files, so they are readable by Notepad. You can open up a map file, and it's maybe a little cryptic, but you can certainly read it and understand some of what's in the map file directly.
Okay.
The BSP is the last file. There is the output of the compiler. When we run those 4 compiling programs that we just set up, it'll spit out a BSP file, and that's what will be loaded in Half-Life. These are not openable by Hammer, but you can open them in a text editor like Notepad. And although there's a lot of gobbledygook up front, there's a huge readable section that'll look just like the map file if you open it in Notepad.
Okay.
So if you want to find out how somebody did something, or yesterday Maki had a question on what sound effect somebody used in their map file, you can actually open the BSP and hunt through it and probably find what you're looking for in Notepad.
All right. It seems strange to me. Maybe it's very obvious to you, but it seems strange to me that the BSP file is not openable in Hammer. That seems like really weird, considering it was used to make it.
Yeah, it's because it's a compiled and optimized format. There are ways to decompile a BSP into a readable format from Hammer, but it makes a mess of things.
Okay.
So during the compilation process, a lot of it is optimization. So the compiler tools throw away any wall that will never be seen. For example, the outsides of your map that otherwise are hitting what we call the void, which is the open space in Hammer.
Right.
Those are just simply thrown away by the compile tools and don't exist in the BSP.
Okay.
So to try to open a BSP, you have to sort of reverse engineer what might have been, and it often it makes guesses, and it can't guess right all the time.
Sure.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, that's another feature of modern engines. So, in other words, there often is no big, long compile step like we have to go through in Gold Source. So, the editor in Unity, for example, can directly open a playable map in Unity. There's no difference, essentially, between what's playable and what's editable.
Okay.
And that leads to a much better pipeline when you're making tweaks and you're just trying to change one thing and see what happens. In Gold Source, we need to go through a couple of steps to do that. In modern engines, it's just let's try it and let's go check right away.
All right then. So I've changed my mind. I don't want to learn Gold Source. I want to go straight to Source. Sorry, Don.
Okay, Maki will take over from this point.
All right then. Okay, so stay on your screen or back to mine.
My screen for just a moment.
Sure.
If you want to open Hammer and have it ready, I think I just want to show you what we'll be using in this, just to create a block map. And the first thing we'll do is open one of Valve's maps just to get a feel for the interface, and then we'll create our own map. And I know we're a little pressed on time, but if you have another half an hour,
let's keep going. It's not a good time to stop, I don't think.
Yeah. So we're only going to highlight these 4 tools in our creation of the map that we'll do in maybe 15 minutes or so. The selection pointer tool is sort of the main tool. So if you're familiar with something like Photoshop, for example, this is just the selection tool that you're usually on when you're trying to select something and move it or copy it or delete it. This is your main tool. So the pointer tool is sort of our default tool for most of what we're doing. The entity tool is supposed to be a light bulb, I think. That's the 4th one down. And that's what will allow us to create the point entities, and that's what we set before. Entities are what populate your map. So brushes there's two main things in Hammer and in Gold Source. There's brushes, which are the architecture of your map, the floors, the walls, the doors, windows, everything like that, the physical things of your map. And the entities are what populate the map. Players, weapons, monsters, lights, aliens, everything that moves or everything that does something, special effects, those are all entities.
Okay.
So we'll actually place some entities later with that entity tool. The block tool below that is what helps us create the physical parts of the map, the brushes.
Okay.
And the apply current texture, we'll get to that. That's just to set the texture of the block that we've created.
All right.
So we'll get to all the other tools, almost all the other tools, probably in the next lesson, but we'll hold off on those.
Yeah. Yep. So, switch to me or you?
Yeah, that's it for now.
Yeah.
No, go ahead and open Hammer, and we'll watch your screen for a while.
All right. Let me.
Or you can watch mine. Either.
I'm going.
Probably best to watch yours. Yeah.
I'm just gonna. Okay. Good. All right. So I'm in Hammer now.
Okay. File and open.
File and open. Okay.
And we're going to choose C1A0.rmf.
So I have to go to my folder where I've installed Hammer and where I've just copied those files over. All right. C1A0. Did you say? No.
Yes, that should be in the Hammer/maps directory now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's where I put it. Okay.
And it should simply open into 4 views.
It does. And there we go.
Okay. These are the standard 4 views in Hammer. Mm-hmm. They are actually all customizable if you want, but we'll be sticking with the default setup here for the future. Yeah. So the upper left is the 3D view, and that should be so you already have it set to 3D textured.
Okay.
So in the upper left you see camera in that window.
I do. It's flashing.
If you click on camera, there are other options you can set there. So if you want to check real quick what 3D wireframe looks like and 3D flat, those are other 3D views that show the same thing in a slightly different format.
Okay. And those are used just to help you navigate and find mistakes and find what you're looking for. And
I don't use them that much, but they may have some use for other mappers. I typically keep it in 3D textured for this view.
Okay. All right. And I could do this.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just about to say that I could do the same for all of these other views. I can change them. So if my preference were to have the 3D textured view on the right at the top, I could do that. I could choose where I put these views, and it seems that we've got 6 choices: 3 3D views and 3 2D views. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and by default it's set up to 1 3D view, and each of the other 3 windows are each of the 2D views.
Okay, so top right is plan.
That makes sense. The upper left, right, is a plan view. That's the top view looking down.
Yep.
And the other 2 are side views, just along the. So the X, Y, and Z axes exist in this world. The Z axis is up, and the X and Y are sort of north and east, for example.
Okay.
I think it's the other way around. I think X is east and Y is north, but.
Okay. We don't need to. We're not gonna. There's no exam that we need to pass for that part.
Yeah,
is there?
not at the moment. Once you get a feel for these things, you'll become more adept at understanding it. So.
All right. Okay.
So in the upper, the easiest way to navigate in the 3D view. So we'll focus on the 3D view for the moment.
Okay.
Is to have your cursor over it and simply type the letter Z.
Okay. So I press it or keep it pressed. Sorry.
Just press it once, and that should toggle. That should give you a tiny little crosshair in that window.
It does. Yep.
And then now you can move around in the 3D view using the WASD keys or the arrow keys. The arrow keys don't work, but WASD and your mouse, and you can kind of kick around. You can. It's in sort of no clip mode, as you were. So.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just using my mouse to look around, and then I would use, like W, for example, to move forward.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so I find this one of the best ways to go from one section of your map to the other, or to get a little better 3D view of what you're building at the moment.
Okay.
And then you just type Z to get out of that mode at the.
Okay. All right. Good.
So.
Yep. Done.
And you can also, I think, you can also mouse
Yep.
scroll your mouse wheel in
If
and out
I'm-
to zoom in and out.
It does. It moves forwards and backwards.
Yep.
Okay, so if
And-
I were to go in Z, I can move around just by using my mouse. So if I don't want to use keys, it is possible to just use the wheel of the mouse to go forward and backwards, and then whatever direction you want to point the.
Oh yeah, how about that?
Okay, all right.
Learn
Okay,
something
good.
new. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
All right.
Um,
So
now for the
B3,
Go ahead.
I don't know how to pronounce his name, but BK3 wait is asking the arrow keys, but the arrow keys in my installation do not do anything. After I've pressed Z in the window, if I press the arrow keys, they don't do anything. So that answers your question.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a way to change that. I don't think there's any key binding per se in Hammer, unfortunately. So
Okay.
if you're not a WASD guy,
I'm not. That's why I was
You
hoping
might
the
be
mouse
out of
would be able to do it.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
well, it's
Okay.
also possible that these other these other alternate programs that I mentioned, Jackhammer and Sledge, they might let you rebind those keys. So if you find it's really a sticking point, you might give one of those other ones a shot.
Okay. Now, just to let you know, by accident, I just pressed the left button by accident, and I've selected stuff. So
Right,
this
because our
happens.
selection tool is active.
Okay.
So that's good. So that shows you can select things in the 3D view,
Okay.
not just the two, and as well as the 2D view. You can select things in the 2D views as well.
Yeah.
But it's often easier, especially once your map gets to a certain level of complexity, simply to navigate to it in the 3D view and select it from there, so you know you're selecting the right things. Because often there can be, and if you zoom in on some of this map on the side views, you can see there's sort of a jumble of lines and places, and it's really hard to tell what's what.
Oops. Okay. All right. So, can I ask some questions now?
Yeah, anytime.
Okay. All right. So basically, I'm on the top right view. I can scroll my mouse in, and it moves forward. But how do I move it up and down?
The best way
there's
to do that is simply hold the space bar. Yeah, you can either scroll the scroll tab, the
Okay.
scroll bars on the
Or
on the right and the
space bar.
bottom, or if you
Okay.
hold the
So
space bar, that drags it around,
yeah,
and you zoom in
Okay.
and out with the mouse.
and you can still zoom in. Oh, damn it! You can still zoom in and out with the mouse, even with the space bar pressed.
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
And
Okay.
if you hold Control and use the mouse, it'll zoom all three views at once.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So that can be handy too.
Control mouse, all three. Okay. All right. Good. Now, before we go any further, I think I'd like to just talk about this general concept of the space that we're working in. I mean, essentially, what we've got is like a huge area that has nothing in, and we
Right.
put things in, don't we? Essentially, we have empty space, and we put in little Lego blocks that we can shape and other things. Those are called the brushes, are the surface areas, and then you called them entities, which are all of the other, like the lights, the enemies, the buttons, and all of those things.
Right.
But we're
Yeah, so
working
if
with
you-
an empty space. That's the key.
If you zoom out in the top view or all three views, or flip to my screen quick, that shows you the entire working space of what we can do.
Let me switch to your
So
screen. Okay.
it's basically plus or minus 4,096 units in each direction.
Right. And what is a unit, approximately?
Roughly an inch, but it's not perfect. So if you try to build something that's like often people try to build their house like to the inch by
Oh,
using
okay.
1 inch equals 1 unit, it's not quite right. In other words, I think it's a little different in the vertical direction than it is in the horizontal directions.
Okay.
So it'll feel like too tight and narrow if you build it that way, because you have to remember Gordon isn't really person sized, or Barney or the scientists aren't really person sized. They're more like small refrigerator size. They're 32 units by 32 units,
Okay.
and then 72 units high. So 72 units high is about right, because that's about 6 feet, maybe average height, let's say. But 32 by 32 is pretty fat, pretty big.
Well, that's
So
Otis
they're,
then. So everybody's Otis size. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, so you have to keep that in mind. So the proportions aren't perfect. So it's
Okay.
often, I find myself often building to what the textures allow,
Hmm.
what the textures are designed for, rather than 1 inch equals 1 unit perfectly,
Okay.
because that is just that ends up feeling wrong for the most part when you actually play the map.
So you've probably been asked this 1,000 times. What approximately is 4,096 units then? I mean, how big is that? It's like a mile or like?
Oh yeah, not even. It's if it's only, well, it's 4096 in each direction off the axis, so it's 7192. I'd have to run the math real quick, but it's not that much.
Okay. And it's
Um,
one big cube, just one
right,
empty cube, and we cannot build outside of that. So if we wanted to build the biggest room possible, that would be the biggest room possible that we could build.
right.
Okay.
And I would not recommend it.
No, of course not. I just want to give. I mean, complete beginners. I just want them to have some kind of conceptual, abstract idea that we've got like the possibility of a huge area, but it is limited. And it would just make no sense to build a room, because even if it was like, like 1 kilometer, a cube 1 kilometer would just look really weird as a room.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it'd
Okay,
be,
so Nike is telling us it's about 104 meters. All right, okay.
yeah, and then if you go plus or minus 4096. So for example, the 0 point is in the very center of the area that we have.
All right, okay.
So you can go to plus 4096 to the like all the way on the right side,
Oh, okay.
and then minus 4096. So his
So it's
answer of
200
104
meters square then.
yeah, something like 200 meters by 200 meters, something like that. So,
All right, okay. As an
so it's not that much
approximate
to play with.
equivalent, no. But that would
Yeah.
be the approximate equivalent if we're thinking that Barney is, 6 foot tall. That would be the approximate 200 meters square.
Yeah, at least a rough, order, a rough guess, for example.
Yeah. And just
Now,
sorry.
so
like-
when you asked about the limits of the map, yes, those are the limits, but I will put an asterisk next to that,
Yeah.
because there are tricks to get outside the buildable area in Hammer.
Okay, but we're not really worried about that.
We're not worried about it. Sven Co-op in their latest engine update has increased that limit, I think, by 4 times.
Wow,
Something
okay.
like that. Yeah, so you can build humongous maps in Sven Co-op with a modified Hammer if you
Okay,
want.
but
But
for
we're
our
not gonna
purposes, we wouldn't even need hardly any of that, because we would be building much smaller maps that are joined together. And
Right.
completely new people need to realise that Half-Life, they probably knew, is made up of maybe 20 different maps that are all joined together. You don't want to build one huge thing. It's better to build smaller things and put them together. That's important to remember, for many logistical reasons as well as technical ones. Is that right?
Right, yeah. I mean, Half-Life, the game was spread out over something like, I think it was 96 maps.
Oh, okay. I thought it was 20,
from
but
begin-
okay, yeah.
No, beginning to end was like 96 maps. So there are some of those maps are just tiny in comparison, because they only went from one door to the next or something like that. Now, some of them used almost the entire area.
Okay.
Anytime you had one of those Osprey planes that flew around and dropped off grunts, you need a
Uh-huh.
ton of space for that, for example. So
Okay.
from the top view, I bet that took up almost the entire area.
Okay.
But you have to be careful, right? You have to think this is an old engine. So you can build things that are almost the entire size of the grid in all dimensions, but the key is how much can you see from any given point. In
Okay.
other words,
Yeah.
a huge open map will perform a lot different than a map that's just rooms and corridors but takes up the entire space.
Okay. All right.
All right, so
Good.
now we have the basics of moving around. I do want to show just go to one of the main rooms that has some stuff in it. Maybe the lobby, where Barney is sitting at the console
Okay.
in this map. And let's see if I can figure out where that is. Sort of in the upper right of the map if you're looking at the top view.
Okay. I think I'm. I think I'm here. With the
You should see the Black Mesa,
Mesa
Research Facility map.
Yep. Okay. Yeah.
So all these colored blocks, so you can see some of the characters now are just kind of standing or walking in place.
Okay.
Or at least they should, right? You see
Yep.
a scientist there.
Okay.
Those are the characters that make up this little section of the mod. These other colored blocks are all point entities.
Right.
So if you click on them, the other thing I wanted to show in this hammer interface is the status bar at the bottom.
Should we swap to your view?
Sure. Yeah, just for a second.
Okay.
Okay, so as you click things in the 3D view to select them, if you notice the very bottom status bar here, down underneath the head crab and to the left, will show you the name of the entity and the type of the entity. For example, I have highlighted now enter Barney speak, which is the name, and the entity type is a scripted sentence.
Okay.
So a scripted sentence is when you want to trigger one of the characters to say something. You use a scripted sentence. And it also gives you the numbers next to it, give you the location in the units.
Okay.
Actually, it tells you the location not of the entity, but of where your cursor is. In other words, you can see me moving around in the 3D view with my cursor.
Okay.
Those numbers are changing, and those only give you 2 numbers because it's just I'm looking at the XY view at the moment.
Okay.
So if it says at 584, 80, that means X equals 584, Y equals 80.
Okay.
And then Z is sort of in and out of the screen. So Z doesn't have meaning in these two, in this view, in this number.
And if you were to move to the side view down below, that would change
it would flip to X and Z, for example.
X and Z.
So you can see, if I put my cursor right near the axis, it should be close to 0. Yeah, so Z equals 0 in this case. And as I move my cursor up, you see Z is increasing 176.
All right, so that turquoise line is a line that intersects the exact middle in those 3 axes.
Right. Yeah. So the origin is 0, 0, 0 axis. Yeah. You can see them in all the views. They are sort of they're the coordinate system.
Yeah.
So if you're familiar with geometry and trigonometry and math, it's a 3D coordinate system. Yeah. And these are the axes. Yes.
Okay.
You can't drag or change these axes at all. They are fixed. They're just there.
Yep.
So yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's so the other thing I want to show you is if you click a brush, click one of the walls. The status will actually give you the size of the walls too, the status bar. So these numbers that say W, L, and H, that's width, length, and height of this selected block.
Okay.
So they're not really meaningful for entities. They just give you the size of the entity block. Here's the 32 by 32 by 72 that, like Barney would be the same. So, oh, and he's a little smaller. Interesting. I think that's wrong. I think his actual size is 32, 32, 72.
Okay.
I think these are off because we're viewing the models versus the old days. Barney and the scientist would just be a purple block like this.
Oh, okay.
So
32, 32.
And then the last point is in the very lower right. It gives it gives the grid size.
Which we were talking about changing earlier. It was initially 64, but you wanted 8.
That's all preference. Yeah. If you zoom pretty far in, you'll see if your grid is set to 8, you'll see these lines are 8 units apart.
Okay.
Now you can change that on the fly.
Which means as we do it. Yeah. Yeah.
Which so the buttons in the upper left under the edit command in the menu, these change this smaller grid and larger grid buttons. Okay. So I can create. If I click this button, you'll see my grid get larger in my views.
Okay.
So now I'm a 64-bit or 64 grid, and typically you have snap on, which means any entity or any brush that you create will snap to these grids. So we could not create anything smaller than 64 units if we are currently on a 64-unit grid.
Yeah, I understand.
That makes sense. This will become clearer as we start to create things in the next step here. So.
Okay.
And then, so the shortcuts for that are the left and right square bracket. You can use the buttons in the upper left.
Okay.
Or you can click the left and right square bracket to change the grid all the way down to all the way down to one unit.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I would recommend leaving it at something like 8 or 16 or 32.
Okay.
For what we'll be doing next.
Okay. So. Well, I'll leave it at 8, and we'll do that. Okay.
Yeah.
Back to me.
Okay, so if you don't have any other questions about these views or navigation here, we will open our new map and start mapping.
I don't think so. Okay. Okay. So we're back.
Then we can close,
back to me.
We can close this. Yeah. Go ahead and close this map. You can just the second button, X button in the upper right, or just I think there's a file. No, there's no file close.
File close.
But there is. Okay, good.
Or I could do it here though. Okay.
Yeah.
All
or
right.
you can leave it open; it doesn't hurt. And now we'll just go to File, New.
Right. So this is the point where we are now building something completely new. Okay. And it's completely empty, as we would expect.
Right. Exactly. So I think you can see. Yeah, if you zoom out in the 3D view with your mouse, mouse wheel, you should eventually see the axes.
I can. I've got like a red and blue line.
Exactly. So that center point there is the exact same point as where the lines cross in the 2D views that we have.
Okay. Yeah. Now I can see the 3 lines.
Yeah, they're not really useful. It's just maybe a visual reference point. I never use them. You can't do anything with them. It's just sort of I don't know, just a visual reference. But I just want to point that out.
Okay.
So what we're viewing in total is we call the void. So if you zoom all the way out again, our 4096 by 4096 by 4096, or plus or minus 4096 in every direction, is our usable space. And when we start to create a map, we create an enclosed space within that. In other words, you kind of have to view the usable space as being in outer space or being underwater.
Okay.
And what we create has to seal against that. So we can't have any open corners or things like that kind of allow the player to view out into the void.
Okay.
Because that's what we call a leak in the map. It needs to seal completely. Otherwise, the engine doesn't quite understand how to show that, and you'll get things like a Hall of Mirrors effect in game, and it causes other problems too.
Okay, so this is really important. That it's got to be not hermetically sealed, but essentially that's what we're saying. That if we were in space and we were to build a space station that had a little gap between the walls, it wouldn't be any use. In the real world, the people would die, but in the game world, it's just bad news. It confuses everything.
Right, so and I think that modern compile tools don't even let you fully compile the map with a leak.
Right.
Old tools, you could still play it, and it would be awful. There would be no lighting, and you would have Hall of Mirrors and things like that, and terrible performance. But modern compile tools are smarter than we are.
All right.
So they won't let you do it.
Here's the question then: if it's such a problem, why don't we just build an outer wall, the maximum size of the area, that we would never then have any leaks at all?
For performance reasons.
Okay.
Yeah, that's called the big block effect,
Okay.
and it's okay for something like a test map, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't build it to the extent of the grid. I would build it
just
around
the. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're testing something. The problem is, then that's such a big set of walls that essentially it can be seen from anywhere in the map, even if your leak is tiny, and that's not exactly the case, but it'll cause performance problems. So you're much better off, certainly for optimization and playability, sealing your map totally with brushes.
Okay. It'd be like building a space station inside a space station. All of the effort would be kind of wasted. Do it properly once, and then we won't have to worry about that.
Exactly.
But Don and I are talking about this because this is a major problem. This can cause lots of problems if you don't do it right. And if you think to yourself, oh, it's close, it's okay. No, it's not okay. Everything must touch. If it's like a wall or a ceiling, it's got to touch. Otherwise, we're going to cause ourselves more problems in the future. So that's why we're kind of talking about this quite a lot.
Yeah, and it'll come up as you map. I mean, I will put, all of my money on the fact that you will have a leak at some point in your mapping career.
Oh my God, you just challenged me.
Unless this is your only map you're ever going to create.
Oh my God, I'm going to work so hard to have no leaks, and then I'm going to call you bank manager for sure.
It just happens, though. It just happens. You go a couple of hours even between compiles or days or something like that, and I once fought for about 3 hours to track down a leak that I had.
Okay.
That was actually turned out to be multiple leaks, which was the problem. So the more frequently you can kind of check your map and compile it and make sure there's no leaks, the better. But there's a trade-off, right? You don't want to be doing that every 5 minutes
No.
either.
Okay. So what you're saying is it does happen even to experienced mappers. It's not just like a beginner
Yeah.
thing. It happens
No,
to
no. Ask
people.
Irby. I would ask Irby if he ever creates maps with leaks in them. So
Okay. Yeah.
I'm willing to bet.
That he does.
Yeah, no, it
Okay.
just happens, and seriously, even the more complicated architecture you get, sometimes the worse it could be, because
Okay,
you can get
yeah.
actually leaks that are smaller than a unit wide.
Wow.
And
Okay.
it's somewhat frustrating, but yeah, you just have to take care and be careful.
Okay.
But so for the first few maps, we'll just be sticking with very simple architecture with square blocks. So if we're careful, it's very unlikely something will go wrong.
Okay. All right. All right. Good.
Okay,
So we're in
let's
space.
start it.
I'm
Yep.
holding my breath. Let's build.
So let's start building. We're going to build 6 walls, or 4 walls and a floor and a ceiling.
Okay.
I can't see. So your camera is in the way of your texture group button up in the upper right there.
Oh,
Or your
okay. So I should
browse
move
texture.
Shall I move my camera?
Yeah, perhaps down to the lower right, like kind of where my on-screen head crab is, like in
Okay.
the lower right, but not covering up the grid information at the bottom right.
All right. Okay. I think that should be okay.
Okay, the first thing we're going to do is select a texture to use.
Okay. So that's
So we'll go.
this
Yeah, see the
button
texture
here.
group. Hit the browse button there,
Yeah. Okay.
and that will actually open up another window.
I'm sorry to ask this, but did your slide have the four cubes? I thought it had less. No.
What?
Okay. When I
Did
saw
what-
when we were looking at your image of this, you made the slides earlier, telling us which tools we're going to be using. I thought there were only 3 cubes, but obviously, okay, my mistake. So I've got the first one is the block tool. The next one is block texture application, and then it's apply current texture, and then there's the one with the target on it, which is apply decals.
Right. So we'll be using the block tool, which is the white
Okay.
block.
Okay.
Yeah, this user interface is not the best use of icons, in my opinion, but you get used to it. So,
So I click this button.
not yet. We're going to first go to the browse.
Damn it, I've
And
clicked
the
it.
textures up on the right, that texture group.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Sorry.
It's actually a floating window, so you can click and drag it if you want to into a new sort of
Okay.
dialog box. So I usually
Yep.
leave it where it is. As soon as we hit browse, it's going to open another window for texture browsing.
Okay. And I want to do
So
that now.
this-
Browse.
Yep. Hit browse, and this will actually load all the textures in the 5 WAD files that we've selected in Hammer.
Okay. All right. I've got that, and I'm scrolling down now, and I can see very familiar. Surfaces,
You'll see the
images.
Half-Life textures. Yeah, exactly. So what we'll do, we'll just build a dev textured map.
Okay.
So you'd start typing, you see in the filter box in
Yep.
the lower.
Okay.
So I would also recommend increasing the size of this box.
Okay.
It's modal, so you can't use Hammer while it's open. So I just make it almost the entire size of my monitor.
Oh,
just so I
okay.
can see as many textures as I can.
Okay. All right. I've done that.
And in the filter box, it'll start filtering by name. So if we type dev, DEV, it should only show the developer textures, which were ported to Gold Source by Jay Polito, I think, who maps
Okay.
for Sven Co-op and I think Natural Selection.
Okay.
So I've kind of borrowed these from him, but I find it to be a very useful starting point for my maps.
All right. So let's just tell users that these are the ones that people start to build the main buildings with without worrying about what texture, what image that should go on top, because we just want to build the geometry. We're not worried about. Imagine you're building a house. Well, you don't put one wall up and then paint it. You put all of the walls up and make sure it's the right size, and then you worry about painting it. And the painting is the texturing. So we're just using the basic textures to make sure that we build the right shape.
Right.
Yep. So
So we'll pick an appropriate one for walls. You can pick say the 128 by 128 up at the top.
Okay.
The fifth one in, I suppose.
Yep. Got that.
That seems a good one to build walls with. So we'll double click that, and
Okay.
that'll now be the currently selected texture in the upper right. You see.
Yep. Okay.
And now we'll go to the block tool, which
Right.
is the gray shaded cube on the left. The 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth tool down on the left.
Yep.
And now if we hover our mouse over one of the 2D views, we can see it sort of turns into, it changes the cursor to be a block tool.
Okay.
So at this point, I would increase your grid to say 32. So hit the right bracket button.
Okay, right bracket.
Or use the button in the toolbar or the right
here or
square bracket.
Okay. 32.
Until you see the snap-on grid go to 32 in the bottom. It should be the right bracket. The left bracket will increase it. Okay.
Yep.
And now zoom in somewhere near the origin. It doesn't have to be exactly, but somewhere near the center of the map. And we will, in the top view, we will click and drag to have, say, one unit or one grid wide by, say, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 grids high.
One grid wide. Long, you mean?
Wide left right. So one grid left right, and maybe 6 to 8, or it doesn't matter. Yeah, you can make it 12. You can make it as big as you want, top to bottom in the top view.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, my mouse is.
And you should end up with a dotted white line before you do anything.
Okay, so I use my left mouse button to change that. I click on it and then I make that shape. That
click and drag. Yep.
Click and drag.
That's good. Yeah.
Okay.
And then when you're done, just release the button and hit enter.
And hit enter. Okay.
And that will create our brush.
Okay.
So now, if we navigate in the 3D view to see that brush, we'll have to increase the height of it, but yeah.
Okay. No, I don't see anything.
Try zooming out and.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now I see.
Then you can zoom back in. Yep.
All right. Okay.
So the one I created was only 2 grid units high. Say look in the lower right.
Okay. Sorry.
Or the lower left or lower right, which is our side view.
Okay.
So it's only 64 units high. We want it higher than that. We want it to be a little bit of a room, so Gordon can actually stand and jump in there. Right? So,
okay.
So we're going to go to the select tool, which is the arrow at the top of the left toolbar. Click that brush.
In the 3D view or in the
any view.
Any view.
Yeah, you can click 3D view is probably easiest. You can click the they place the X there in the center for you to click, but you can also click almost anywhere within the entity, and it should highlight in red.
Okay.
Highlight in red? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now we're going to grab one of those white blocks in the center of the top or bottom of the brush in the side view.
Okay.
And just click and drag, and we want to increase the height to, say, I don't know, 128 units, let's say.
Oh, okay.
So as you're dragging, you should see the next to the zoom in the status bar.
Okay.
You should see that change real time to the size of your brush.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, but I think I've done it maybe in the wrong dimension. I think I've got this block now that's just 128 high.
That's okay, yeah.
Okay.
128 high, if that's the right... well, from your stream, you're going to 128 on the axis. What you want are the numbers next to it, which say 32 by 128.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That's the real-time size. The ones on the left are the coordinates.
Oh, yeah, okay, 128.
But it doesn't need to be 128. It can be as high as you want. So you can leave it as to what you had it. You will just have a really tall room. That's
okay,
fine.
okay, no, okay, all right. So that's now 128 high. Okay.
Okay.
By 224 long.
Fine. Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
It's a small map, but that's okay. So we'll now copy and paste this brush. You can also create a new brush if you want. But since we're just going to make essentially a cubic room, we'll just copy and paste this.
Okay, so what we've made is a wall. A 3-dimensional wall that is 32 units wide. Currently it's 224 units long and 128 high. That's what we've made. Okay. Right.
We will now proceed to make, you need 6 walls for a cube. Remember, this has to be, we're making the enclosed space that Gordon can live in, which is in direct contrast. If anybody's familiar with the Unreal Engine, you kind of start with a block of clay and you have to carve out the playable area. We're doing the reverse. We're building the playable area sort of in Lego form, sealing it against the void.
Yep, okay. So
the typical copy and paste will work. You Control-C, Control-V if you want.
Control-C.
You can also shift and drag
Control-V.
a wall.
Okay, let me try the control. So I've got it selected. in the 3D view and in all of the views. I Control C and then I Control V, and that creates a copy offset from the original.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Good.
You can now click and move that one. So if you click once on to highlight the wall, you can then move that in any view with your cursor should be a plus sign. In other words, don't grab one of the white blocks. You want to grab the sort of the center,
the X
of the brush.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you can kind of see you can move that around, and it's not increasing size; it's simply moving.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And you also said I can use Shift and drag. So if I put my finger on Shift, and where do I put the cursor when I do that? It doesn't matter.
It needs to be as if you were moving that. So Shift just allows you to move and copy at the same time.
Okay.
So we want, what you want is a decent space between them in the top view. You want to have a little bit of room for Gordon to walk around. So,
I left click in the X, and that allows me to move it.
Right. You can also, since we set that option in the options menu, you can also do it with your arrow keys. So if you have a block highlighted and you have your cursor is in the top view, for example, whatever the active view is, use your arrow keys and that will nudge it to the next grid line.
Yeah, okay. I can see that.
Up, down, left, right, that stuff.
Yeah.
So I find that handy for if you want to create something that's not offset. If you want to move something directly along the x-axis, for example, using the arrow keys can help it line up correctly. Now, we're on a 32 grid setting, so it's not too difficult to line things up properly. So.
Okay. Okay, so I need to do 4 walls like this, yes?
Yeah, I actually see you have 3 already. So.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I did the Control V, Control C, Control V. Then I did the Shift to test out both methods.
Okay.
So,
now, you see in your side view that one wall is actually higher than the others. Right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I would take that third wall, the one that's higher than the others, drag it down in the side view to match the level of the other 2 walls, and then we will resize that wall.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right, so I've done that, and then I just make another one, yes?
Well, let's just work with this one for now.
Sure.
So you have the wall number 3. In the top view, what I want you to do is so if it's perfectly lined up in line with the other 2 walls at the moment, nudge up 1 with the top view.
Nudge it up 1.
Highlighted. Yeah, nudge it up 1 grid unit, so it'll be offset by 32. And now we will resize that, so make a 32 by 32 block in the top view. Highlight it, grab the white block in the center bottom.
Yep.
And
center
just
bottom.
move it up until you get 32 by 32.
Oh, so make it a square, you mean?
Make it square from the top view, yeah.
32 by 32. Make it 32 by 32. Okay, so 1 unit. Okay, all right.
But you don't want it 1 unit thick. You want it 32. Yeah, you can.
Okay.
You can go all the way down to 1 unit, but
no. When I said 1 unit, I'm looking at the grid, and the grid is like.
I'm sorry.
No. You were right to highlight it, but
1 grid.
I'm looking down the bottom, and it's 32 wide, 32 long by 128 high.
Perfect, and it's offset just outside the other walls.
I think so.
Okay, now we're going to resize that left and right. So just highlight it again, grab the white block, and drag it all the way to the first corner you find on the right hand wall.
Okay,
does that make sense?
All right.
You can always flip to my view real quick if you.
No, it does make sense. One question I've got though is that what we've got now is we've got 2 points joining. So like 2 corners are joining.
Right.
Would I not want to go right to the end of the other block? So it kind of overlaps. Instead of corners, we've got like 1 part. I mean, I'm thinking like physical dimensions here. It would be a stronger wall, but in this case, it doesn't make any difference, does it? The corner to corner doesn't make any difference.
Right, it doesn't make any difference. Some of this is user preference, and there's been people have been at odds for 18 years about their opinions on this.
Yeah.
I prefer this setup in that you just join at the near corners.
Okay.
Because sometimes that can help with texture alignment. Because the only playable surface is the inside of this box.
Okay.
So, for example, you, a wall texture, for example, might have a starting point. Might have something at the very end, like it's hard to say, but like a post or something like that. So if we extended that wall past to the far corner, that part is never going to be viewable by the player.
Okay.
So if you align the texture all the way to that side, when we're applying textures, that'll be hidden permanently from the player.
All right, and it could be misaligned and.
Right. Whereas if you end that wall at the exact corner where they only meet at one point,
Yeah.
then that side of the texture will always be viewable by the player. It'll be in the corner where you probably would want it.
Okay.
So again, this is personal preference. We're using dev textures, so it doesn't matter at the moment.
Okay.
All
right.
But this is how I build things personally.
Yeah, that's fine. We start with you, and then if other people want to change that. So then I select it again, and one presumes I drag it with the left to the same corner in the opposite side.
Precisely. Yep.
Okay.
So you should
I've
just
done
have
that.
a nice like horseshoe sort of sized or arch, not really arch, but three blocks that kind of make a horseshoe shape in
Yep.
the top view.
And I'm presuming now I'm going to copy the one I've just resized to the bottom.
Exactly. Shift and drag
Shift and
all the way
drag.
down until the top of that block meets the bottom of the other two,
Yeah.
on left and right.
Right, I'm just going to go in here so users can see a different view. I'm going to maybe come out, go right here. Okay. Z to take me out. All right. Yep.
Okay, now you have more or less a square, right? Say a rectangle.
Well, I've got a
In
rectangle.
the top.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to make the floor and the ceiling, and we're going to make them a different texture.
Okay. So I
So
need
we'll go
to
back, browse. Yep. And you should still have dev in the filter. This often
I do.
retains the last filter that you use in the texture box.
Can I? Sorry. Can
go
I
ahead.
double click the current texture? No. Okay. So instead of clicking browse, I was seeing whether I could double click the image of that texture to open up that texture box, but you can't. You have to click
No, I
browse.
think just browse.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And then let's pick a gray one, maybe the one next to it, the 128 by 128 gray texture.
Yep. Okay.
That seems to be a good floor texture.
And I double click that now.
Right, so
Yeah.
now that's the active texture in your upper left. You always check that before you build a block.
Upper left. Upper right.
Upper right. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Upper right.
Yeah.
Go back to the block tool, the white box on the left.
Yep.
Block tool.
Okay.
And now in one of the side views, say your lower right side view, the XZ side view,
Okay.
we're going to draw a floor first. So we'll pick where you think the floor should be, make it 32 units in height,
Okay.
and click and drag across sort of the center wall there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. If I'm doing it, actually I would have done this in the top, but
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine then. Yeah, go ahead and do it in the top.
okay. So
We'll have to make it. You have to make it fit in all three views anyway. So,
Sure.
Or two of the three views, let's say.
okay. So I've done that, and then I press enter.
Yeah, you can also resize this in the other view before you press enter.
Okay.
So, in other words, while you have the white sort of dashed lines,
Yep.
you can resize this in another view to fit the hole where the whole floor needs to be,
Okay.
and then hit enter, and it will be that dimension.
Yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the selection tool, select it in a 3D view so I can see it in my side view, and then make it 32 units high, but also put it on the right level. So it's like it's not inside our room, it's on the floor of the room.
Right. Yeah, it's sort of the same joining idea as between the walls. You have them meet at the inner vertex,
Okay.
the inner point.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And then we can shift back to our selection tool and shift and copy that in the side view to make a ceiling.
Okay, done.
Okay, now we just have to be careful. Now we're on a 32 grid, 32 unit grid. So
Yep.
it's very unlikely. It'd be obvious if we were off by a little bit if we had a leak in our map,
Oh,
just by
okay.
inspection. Okay,
So-
you can sort of fly around it in the 3D view as well, just to kind of double check to make sure there's no way you can see the inside from the outside or vice versa.
Okay, let me do that then.
But we're pretty safe with this grid setting at the moment. Yeah.
Make sure. Okay, so I'm just sort of walking around, well, flying around.
Yep.
Okay.
It looks pretty good from what I see of your view,
Okay.
So now we're ready to put entities in, and we're only going to put 2 in.
Okay.
So now we're going to go to the entity tool, which is that gray light bulb on the left. I think it's a light bulb.
Yeah.
I'm not actually sure.
Yeah. Okay. We think it's a light bulb. Okay.
Yeah. And if you see, your cursor kind of creates looks like an axe or something in the 2D views. I don't really understand.
Okay. Yeah. It looks like an axe in the 2D views.
Yeah. But we're going to select, so over on the right column below the texture area, you have a categories list that should say entities.
Okay.
And objects underneath it.
Yep.
So if you click that drop down that says objects, these are the point entities which can populate our map.
Okay.
So we're going to scroll down to info_player_start.
Okay.
Info player start. Click that and highlight it, so it should now be in the objects.
It is
box there.
Yep.
And the easiest way to place this, you can either click in the 3D view or in the 2D view.
Okay.
To place this. I typically click in the 3D view, although that puts Gordon right like waist high in the floor for me. If you click on the floor in the 3D view, so make sure your camera is inside your box.
Yep.
Click once on the floor, and you should see Gordon appear halfway through the floor.
He's halfway through the floor.
Right.
But I can see that in my side view. I can see that green box there.
Exactly. So we'll select him.
So I go to selection tool.
Yep.
Select him, and then I can.
And then I would just nudge him in one of the side views with the. Oh, this is where we might want to change our grid a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. He's only sort of.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can either get him just sort of like embedded in the floor, which will mean the player will be stuck.
Yep.
Or will be
floating.
like, a huge amount. So you don't want him exactly on the floor, but you probably want him, I'd say 8 to 16 units above the floor. Otherwise, the player will actually fall as he spawns, as you spawn. So if we decrease the grid down to 8, say you can get Gordon within say 8 or 16 units of the floor. That'll be fine.
Okay. I made it to 4, but we want it to 8. Okay, so it's just one click above the floor. If it's one below, if I click down now, he's below. If I click now, he's above, but he's not on the floor, so that's okay.
It doesn't need to be on the floor. In fact, I would recommend not putting entities like monsters and things like that on the floor.
Okay.
There's a chance they can get stuck, I think. So I always allow a little bit of space above the floor, but not so much that they fall, fall and hurt themselves.
Okay.
So,
all right.
No Verax. This is Gold Source. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we're done with him at the moment. He's
okay. He's
you
there
see Gordon
waiting.
is. This will sort of be that'll be exactly where you start the map when you load it.
Okay.
The one other thing we need in this map is a light.
Okay.
We can compile it without lights, but it'll either be full bright or full dark, and I don't remember which the modern compiles tools will do. So we'll actually just place a light entity. So we'll go back to the entity tool.
Click the entity tool. Back to our objects on the right-hand side.
And there should be a simple light. That's all it says. You don't want light spot or light environment. Those are different.
Light.
You just want light.
Okay.
And let's click in the 3D view, or sorry, the 2D view this time.
Okay.
So somewhere in the box, saying that it doesn't matter if it's a top view or side view, just click once, and it'll create this big sort of crosshair thing for you.
Okay, yeah.
And then you can move it around by placing your cursor directly over the box in the middle, and sort of moving it up and down, left and right, wherever you want.
I'm going to put it in the opposite corner. Okay.
Yeah, I would put it up high, perhaps. Not all the way at the ceiling, but above Gordon's head.
Okay. And just to clarify, this is actually a light, but it's not like a light fitting. It's not like a lamp. It's just the idea of visible light without anything connected to it. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So this light, I don't use personally that often. I use it for special, subtle lighting here and there, and we'll get to the lighting later, probably in 2 lessons. But texture lighting, where light fixtures are casting light are a much more attractive effect graphically.
Okay.
And obviously better explained in the world. In other words, you have a fixture that's casting light, not just light itself.
Yeah.
As you were trying to get at. So when we're ready, we'll just hit enter, and that'll create a purple box for me.
It does.
Where the light is. Yep.
And a light bulb in my 3D view.
Yes. Which actually reflects the color that we select too. So
okay.
If we want, and I'll show you one other quick trick. If you select the light in the 3D view, get your 3D views so you're looking at it. Select it.
Got it.
And then hit Control E as an echo, and that will center all 3 views on which you have selected.
Okay. Control E.
So that makes it easy in a complex map. That makes it easy to go to a specific point in all 3 views.
Okay, that could be useful.
Yeah.
In a few months.
I will certainly list out the useful keyboard shortcuts probably in the next list. This is one of the critical ones that I use all the time. So.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're going to actually change some properties on this entity.
Okay.
So you can either hover it over it in the 2D view.
Well, I'm still on Control E. Nothing's been deselected yet, so.
Okay. You want to hover over it and click right click and hit
in
properties?
In the 2D view, did you say?
In the 2D view, yes.
Okay.
Any of the 2D views. Right click and there should be a right click menu there.
Yes.
Properties at the bottom. Yeah,
yes.
The other way to get to this is Alt Enter.
Okay.
So if you have it selected, any entity, and you hit Alt Enter,
that takes us to the properties of that entity.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. So the only thing we want to change here is, so these are a list of the attributes or properties you can change for a light entity.
Okay.
This list of in the white box on the left.
Mm-hmm.
We will only change the brightness, and actually we're going to only change the color, but the brightness and color are set by the same list of numbers there.
Okay.
So click on brightness, and you should see a box with 4 numbers in it, and a pick color box below it.
Okay.
Go ahead and pick color. That should open the standard Windows color selector box.
Okay. We'll do a pink. I'm in a pink mood. Okay. Click OK. Yep.
Pick whatever you said. You picked a pink color.
No, is that what you wanted me to do, or not?
Any color you want. No, the standard one is this yellow, which is ugly.
Okay, I picked pink because it wasn't similar to the textures that we got, and I wanted to for it to be obvious to people that that color is the one.
I'm not sure how pink will look, but yeah, let's try it.
Okay.
I'd be interested to see what this looks like.
All right.
So the way this is given, and these RGB numbers are the first 3 numbers, red, green, blue.
Yep.
The last number is brightness.
Yep.
And brightness is a little bit of a gray area. In other words, you can't say that 200 is bright or not bright. It depends on where it's placed and the color and everything around it. So I think for our example, 200 is fine. If it's not, we'll see that as soon as we run the map, and we'll raise it or lower it if we need to.
Right.
So that's all we need to set. So we can close this box, and we're done.
Okay, and we've noticed that the 3D model now has changed to the pink that I set.
Exactly.
As you said. Okay.
It's one of the few 3D models that actually reflects your settings.
Okay.
So, but it's handy so that you can actually see it and at a quick look what color your light is.
Yep.
So now we're ready to save. So go up to File, and then say Save As.
Save As.
And then name it. It should point to your Maps directory under Hammer.
It has. Okay.
And then just name it LDA Map 1 or whatever you want to call it. I would recommend no spaces.
Yep, I never use spaces.
And I would actually recommend no capital letters either.
Okay, I've used no capital letters. I've used a hyphen because I don't like underscores, but hyphens are okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right, and then I click Save.
Yes.
LDA Session 1.
And now up in the upper left, it gives you your RMF name.
Yes, it has.
Okay.
Good.
So that will kind of stay there. What we'll also do is export it to .map format, .map format, which is what our compile tools need. So back in the File menu, there's an export to .map.
There is.
Halfway down, roughly.
Yep. Click that.
I would leave it the exact same name, .map.
All right. I've got this Save Visible Objects Only. That's unchecked.
Doesn't matter for now. We'll get to that later. Yeah.
Okay. And I click Save.
We have nothing invisible now.
Okay.
Later we might.
So
yeah, just hit Save. Yep. Now it's exported,
Okay.
and now we're ready to go to batch compiler.
Right. Which is down here, still open. No. Yes, it is. Okay. I'm still in my. Okay. So I click open. No.
No, we actually just want to click in the lower right of the sort of the lower half of the batch compiler window. There's a file sort of browser and a dot 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 button next to the run button.
Next to the run, which is grayed out.
Right, because we have to
Yeah.
select a map first. So
Okay.
click the dot dot dot. Select the dot map file. It should open the maps directory.
No, it didn't. It opened.
Okay.
If I cancel and do it again, what it opens is it opens the presets of the batch compiler.
Oh, okay, so that was the last active directory. So you want to
Yeah.
go to your hammer /maps directory.
Yeah.
which
Select
is
the
where we
map that
just-
I've just saved, the dot map that I've just saved.
Right.
Open.
Open, and then that should simply fill in the name there.
It does.
I would click the remember file box on the left,
Okay. Done.
and now if all five boxes of the stages are still checked.
They are.
Which they should. We're ready to hit run, and when we do that, it'll run the 4 compile tools in sequence.
Okay.
You'll see a console window pop up, and at the end, I think it'll also open the log file in Notepad
Okay.
for us
And
to look through.
I do that now. Yes.
Yep. Let's click run. We'll compile together. Should take a few seconds.
Okay. So we've got a command window.
Yep.
I've got a file that's been run virtually. I think that might be a problem. That might my firewall and my antivirus has run the HLCSG_x64 virtually, and in fact it looks like all of these are being run virtually, which probably means that they won't save anything. So we might have to do that again.
Well, the way to check, you can either disable it, or the way to check is to go to your hammer/maps directory and check if there was a BSP file generated.
No BSP file generated. So let me
Okay.
do that again.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I've never bumped into this.
No, it's okay.
I use firewall, but not something that catches that.
All right. So now I've got a log opened. So
Did you rerun it?
yes, I reran it,
Okay.
and it says that there was an error in my command box. It says that there's an error compiling your map. This is probably because my antivirus is. Let me try and open. I don't actually use this very much. I don't really know how to do it. Let me try and go to
Yeah, is there a way you can whitelist programs or something like that, perhaps?
firewall antivirus. Let me disable the antivirus for a second. Click OK for 15 minutes. Okay, so on my screen now, I've got the command box which is telling me there's an error, and I've got a log that's opened which is telling me error, can't open C maps, C hammer maps LDA session 01.po.
Yeah, I think that's because of your antivirus.
Yeah, I'm gonna close
That's
both
what
of those.
PO is. P0 is one of the temporary files
P0.
that it generates
Okay.
during compilation.
So I'm
So
gonna
if it
try-
couldn't generate the file, yeah.
I'm going to run it again. I've got exactly the same problem.
Oh boy.
Load chart. Okay, now this second one seems to be a different one now. Okay, there was a problem compiling the map. Check the file .log. Well, that's what I'm doing. Arguments. Let me move Let me move that so that you can probably see it on the screen. So I'm sure this is to do with my antivirus, which I have now disabled.
As Irby says, welcome to mapping for Gold Source.
Yeah, okay.
I think it is, but I'm not 100% sure. Can you flip through quickly your the 5 tabs there, starting with CSG?
Yeah.
I just want to see if you have any settings checked there.
Okay, so that's the CSG. I'll sort of wait for you to catch up.
Yeah. You can flip through them if you want while
Yeah.
waiting.
Okay, so that's BSP. Viz. rad, rad2, shared, and batch. Being a highly trained, experienced computer person, I would probably close the batch compiler and start again. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's telling me that I might. Bollocks is suggesting that I might have to close that down because maybe antivirus is still controlling it in some way.
Yeah, before you do that, I would save this as a preset. So now that we've selected the map in the second, the lower half there, resave this preset. So go to File, Save Preset.
Not save as, save preset.
No, Save Preset. Yeah, we'll leave it the same name there.
Okay.
And then go to Options and Setup again.
Yep. Okay.
And the Presets tab.
Yep.
And click Add.
Okay.
And then find that preset, which should be under Batch Compiler Presets.
Okay. Yep. Open.
Open.
Okay.
And then OK. And now that's added a presets text menu item there. In other words, you have File, Compile, Specifications, Presets now in your top menu.
Presets. Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and now you can just directly load your first map. So it'll load whatever settings you have in all of the tabs.
Okay.
Plus, it'll load that map file that we just used.
All right, so
it's a handy way to get to this preset without loading it through the file menu.
Okay.
So.
All right, so now I just close this.
Yeah, you can close it and restart it.
Got a shortcut there.
Because High Taxes, we're compiling with the Vulkan's updated Half-Life tools, not the original Quake tools or Zoners tools.
Okay, so now I run it. I'm going to completely close my internet security for a second.
Okay.
Okay. But I don't know, obviously there was a problem compiling the map. Check the log for the cause. So, I mean, you'll need to see the...
Yeah, just leave the log up and I'll take a look at it.
Okay. My
It's the pending.
My antivirus is... I'm going to completely close my internet security for a second.
Okay. I don't know. Anybody else in the chat see the problem? I don't see what.
Okay, I'm just closing that for a second.
It's starting with Why is it starting with BSP? Yeah, can you go back to the console window there, Philip?
Yeah, I closed it because
Okay.
Okay, all right, back to the console.
And also, I'm sorry, go back to when you have a chance.
Yep.
In Batch Compiler, go back to Options and Setup for the stage paths.
Okay, stage paths.
It looks like you might be running BSP first.
No, it's got on the list is CSG, and a BSP, and a BIS, and RAD.
I don't see any CSG in your log though. Oh, it does have an NCL CSG in the console window. Yeah, that looks okay. So in the console window, I would scroll up if you can to let us take a look at CSG output. And I'm not sure why that's not showing up in Notepad. That should be logging to Notepad as well. Yeah, we can check that too, Bollocks, in case your folder is set as read-only, but I doubt it. No, so CSG is running okay. So that log looks okay for CSG for me. There's no errors coming out of it.
Okay.
There was a problem. Why is it actually... It's not actually telling us the problem. Let me run my compile again to see if it does the same thing.
Is it possible that my operating system's not? I don't want to be looking at that in when I'm streaming, but okay. So viewers, what you're seeing here is really what happens. You know, sometimes these things happen.
Yeah, I think it's a problem. Sorry, with your firewall or antivirus. I don't think it's a problem with the map itself.
Okay.
Or the compile tools. Mine is identical up to the point where it says arguments C, hammer tools HLBSP.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what would be the solution at this point? I mean, obviously restarting the computer is an option, but that means that we lose the stream. So what I think we should probably do is stop the stream now, and then when we come back in a couple of weeks, we can say, okay, so this is where we were. If you haven't had any problems, woohoo. If you have, then we'll solve them with you.
Yeah, well, the other thing we could do real quick, just to wrap this stream up,
Yep.
is if you want to flip to my screen,
Yeah, okay.
and I'll walk through the last couple of steps
Absolutely.
just to show
Quite right.
what would happen in a perfect world.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, that's
okay.
true.
You're
Irby
right.
has a point too. It might be the 64-bit tools.
Yeah.
But yeah, why don't we walk through that quick? I'll show it. I'll actually play the map in Half-Life, which
Yeah,
looks
okay. So
more or
we're
less
on
just
your-
like yours.
Let me make sure that my camera's off on the screen, so we don't see me.
So I will.
Yep,
I
okay.
exported this already, but I will export it again. Mine is
Okay.
called LDA-map1,
Okay.
and here's batch compiler. Already loaded up LDA map1 here. I hit
Okay.
run, and this is it. As obviously runs pretty quick, and this is what the output should look like.
Right.
BSB, it runs through the settings, and then it gives you, some information about what ran here. And if there were a problem running BSP, it would be down here typically, and
Okay.
say there was a problem running BSP. So it continues with BIS and RAD, which does the lighting. And then, so there's no problems. It would tell us here in the command window if there was a problem compiling the map, and it would often give you more detail in the log file too.
Okay.
So it looks like everything ran okay. So I'll actually flip to Half-Life and run the map.
And we told it that we're saving all of our maps in the Half-Life folder, so we don't have any settings to do.
We should make sure you can actually see Half-Life.
At the moment, I can't see anything. Just got a big black box with a white box in the top left.
Oh, well, that's troubling.
Technically.
Well, let me actually. Oops, I don't want them. See if the game actually shares to you. I don't know why, but no, I'm walking around in the map, but you're not
Okay.
seeing anything, huh?
I'm not seeing anything. No.
Okay.
Try running it in a window.
How do you run?
You go to properties, and then
It's windowed or something,
yeah, it's
or is it?
no, I think it's window.
Oh.
Okay. Oh, okay.
This
it
looks
worked.
better because now I can see the Skype outline. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you see it?
Yeah, I can. Yes.
What the hell did I call this?
LDA
LDA.
map 1, I think.
Yeah, I wish I could remember my own name.
All right.
Okay,
Here we go.
so here's our
Is
map.
that, and a pink
Not very
lights.
exciting.
Yeah, I can see pink
pinkish.
lights.
Mine wasn't magenta like yours, but
Okay.
it was still pink. So we can see that we started here. It's just enough room to jump here, 128 units high. So this is a
Okay.
very tight room, but this is our map.
Yeah.
That's what we created. Yes, some of the textures are backwards. That's okay. We'll fix that when we get to texture lessons.
Okay.
The ceiling and the floor are gray. So that's our map.
All right. So we've created a box. If we don't put a player start, we can't use it.
Right.
We have to have a player start because otherwise the player won't appear in it. We can't have any spaces between any of the walls, because if we do and we were in outer space, it wouldn't work. We would die. Think of it as like oxygen. Some people have used the idea of being surrounded by water. If there was a space, the water would go in. Either analogy is good, because we're saying that there can't be any spaces. And then everything else besides this is just one level of complexity above, or more levels. But this is it. This is 6 walls, a player start, and that's it. We put a light so that we got something to look at, but I mean, from here on in, it's just making things more interesting and more complicated, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, this is, as basic a map as you can get.
Yeah. I mean, we put in stairs, and we can talk about glass, and we got all of these things, and outsides and all of those, but essentially this is it. It's a box with a player start, and then we start adding more things, and we start making the boxes more interesting. That's really what it is, and that's what we're going to be doing. So,
yep, exactly.
All right, excellent. Okay, so yeah, as has been said, it was a little bit longer than 90 minutes. We're coming up to 2 hours 45, but I think it was important that we did everything in the process. I apologise for my compiling not working, but as you can see, it's something to do with my computer rather than the process itself. I'm not going to apologise for taking so long and doing things in detail. I understand that the mappers in the stream are super frustrated the way we do things, because they don't agree perhaps with how you've done it and changing the views, but that's not important. What's important is that we've made our first map, and we've taken our time and we've done it properly. This is not going to be a short-term project for me. Just like puppies, mapping is for life, not just for Christmas. Okay, so if you're watching and thinking, oh my god, it's taking 2 hours and 45 to just get to this far when I could have done that in 10 minutes, okay, I'm happy for you, but in a year's time this would have been worthwhile for everybody. And in answer to one of the messages on the on the chat things, no, I'm not going to upload this map to the RunThinkShootLive website. And the reason is because it doesn't have an enemy or a weapon. That's why, Mackie. But thank you for suggesting that. Any final words, Don?
No, I think a lot of today was simply one-time setup things that will not need to change in the future. So, yes, it ran a little longer than we wanted, and maybe a little frustrating to the viewers, but it was necessary prep work, and the more familiar we get with actually mapping, the quicker everything will go. Yeah. So,
and you can see Don just putting
next
a head
time
crab
we'll
in there.
be able to just jump right into. Next time we'll be able to jump right into Hammer.
Okay. So yes, we will, and we'll be able to do what you're doing now, which is put a head crab and do those kind of things. So what I'm going to say to the viewers now is that tomorrow I'll try and spend a little bit of time practicing what I've learned, and if I can do that, I'll do that on the stream. Those streams won't be uploaded to YouTube. I don't know if I should do that or not. Maybe.
Well, we could think about it later. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it might be helpful.
First thing.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The first thing I would try, even before test mapping, is Irby's suggestion a little while ago, is switch back to the non-64-bit tools.
Yes.
So if we go back to the setup of the batch compiler, select the non-x64 tools for each one of those steps. See if that works. That might be the easiest thing to try, and if that works, then we're great. You're set. So.
Yeah, I mean, I could do that very quickly now. So that's in batch compilers.
Yep, that'll be setup or options setup.
Yep.
And then stage paths.
Yeah, and then when it opens up the box, where are those paths? In the tools. Okay, Hammer tools. Okay, so the non-64
Yeah, it'll be the same direct.
Yeah.
Sorry, you do have to point it back to tools.
Yeah. Okay.
And you want it's the HLCSG for the first step, not the X64.
Yeah. Oh, I'm doing all of them.
Right. Yeah. Repeat for all 4.
Yep.
Yeah, it actually is worth checking your computer real quick just to see if you are 64-bit too.
Seems to be working, but I was 90% sure, 100% sure. It seems to have worked. Error deleted. Did end red. All right, so let me go back to my maps folder. I do not have a BSP, but I'm not expecting it to because it would be in my Half-Life maps folder. But how will I know?
It should be in both. It should be in both. Yeah.
Okay, no, then I don't have one. I don't have a.
Wait, they both ran fine. So, I don't know why Notepad is not really logging your full compile. It's like appending. It's very strange.
Okay. It says that there was a problem compiling the map, but then in the compile, it seemed to have compiled everything. I mean, I can't read it all. I don't understand it. Let me start Half-Life very quickly, see what happens. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can also check your Valve Maps directory quickly too.
Yeah, actually, that's probably the best thing to do. No.
Yeah, no, it'll leave a lot of other files in that Hammer Maps directory if it compiled. So it looked like the tools ran. I'm afraid that it's being prevented from creating files or something by either your antivirus or firewall still.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll look at that and we'll have an update. We'll have an update with the next stream. So we apologise for finishing on an error, but as somebody said in the stream, that this is gold source mapping. I mean, it's not going to be, a beautiful flow where everything works properly. We're going to encounter errors, and if you don't expect that, then that's a bit silly of you. And we just have to keep working. If it, that's the way it is. So no problem. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for spending time with me, Don. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you to all of the viewers. Currently, we've got 20 people in the stream. So that's good. Bollocks is telling us that he's published a Darkstar walkthrough. So if you're into Darkstar, watch that. That'll be at 60 frames a second and high definition. So watch that. And that's it for now. We'll be back at some point. As we said at the beginning, we don't have a fixed schedule, but we will let people know in plenty of time. And I won't be telling people in advance of any of the practice sessions. I'll just be basically, okay, I got half an hour. I'm going to practice. I'll stream and then I'll upload to YouTube later on. So that's it. Thanks for watching. And remember, building maps is not it's not a smooth process. I think it's going to be the new tagline for LDA. That's it. We're done. Thank you and good night. Goodbye. Bye, Don.
See ya.